I'd like to call the Natural Resources Commission meeting of May 8th, 2025 to order. My name is Becky Humphreys. And I ask everybody as we embark on this commission meeting to silence your phones. We're going to pretend like we're in a movie theater today, folks. So turn it off so we're not disturbing one another. Let's go through a roll call of the board. Commissioner Walters.
John Walters, Indian River.
Commissioner Anthony.
Here.
Commissioner LaFleur.
Here.
Commissioner Ridley.
Yeah, Ridley, Grand Rapids here.
And our AG, Assistant AG.
Dan Bach, the Attorney General's office.
All right. Mine, as I mentioned, Becky Humphreys. Let's take a look at our agenda for today. Take a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
A second. Any amendments or discussion?
I have an amendment that I'd like to have removed.
Okay.
It just says Commissioner report an amendment. If I could have that removed from the agenda today.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we have an approved agenda. The meeting minutes, I'd like to approve the meeting minutes today.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Are there any edits or clarifications? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. And now, my dear, it is the director's report.
Thank you.
Director Bowen.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, the Shikar Safari International Wildlife Officer of the Year Award is one of the awards recognizing outstanding performance in the law enforcement division. The honor also carries the distinction of being Michigan's Conservation Officer of the Year. Nominations are submitted by conservation officer superiors based on established criteria related to the officer's accomplishments and personal attributes. Mrs. Louise Clark of the Shikar Safari Club International is here to present the award to the 2024 Officer of the Year. Chief Haynes is here from the Law Enforcement Division, also to say a few words about the recipient. Chief Haynes.
I'm going to turn it over to Louise.
Hello. Well, thank you very much. This is always a fun time annually for Shikar Safari Club International to give the nominated Conservation Officer of the Year award. It's always an honor. Michigan is excellent at this. We give to all the 50 states, including Hawaii, and the 7th province in Canada. But they have very small CO groups, so we've already given all the awards we can give them. They got to redo it. This year, recipient is well, he will be. You will find out more about him from Chief, and it's really a very great story. And it's great to have everybody here. For Shikar Safari is not the Safari Club International. It's a different, very different group. It's a very small group of like-minded people that travel internationally and in the North America for hunting and fishing. And it's called Shikar. It's an Asian safari. That's why it's called Shikar. And safari is obviously Africa. But it can really, these days it transcends all sorts of different hunting projects. And the club raises a lot of money, about $1 million a year, and some of that is squirreled away for the Conservation Officer program. The unique thing about this program, two things. One is that the officer is elected by his peers. So it's a pretty cool thing that way. And the other thing is, if unfortunately the officer was killed in the line of duty, he would have an immediate $20,000 check sent to his family for anything that they may need after that. It's kind of a unique program that way. So we're very excited, and I'll hand it over to the
Thank you, Louise, and first I want to thank you and your organization for continuing to recognize our hardworking officers with this award. And good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Conservation Officer Justin Ulberg. CO Ulberg joined the Law Enforcement Division team in 2014 as part of Recruit School number 5. When he graduated from that training academy, he was recognized with the top performing academic award. He was initially assigned to Lenawee County, later transferred to Kent County, where he serves up to today. And before I get too far into it, I want to point out that every one of us that do this work, we know that we can't do this on our own. We need that very good support system at home. And I'm glad to see that Justin has a fantastic family here with him today supporting him. He's got his wife Heather and his 2 sons, Jason and Rowan. So appreciate you being here for that. So as I mentioned, CO Ulberg is currently assigned to Kent County, and he is known amongst his peers as the go-to guy that can be counted on to fill holes where necessary. Over the years, he's been an area that has had adjoining counties that have been short-staffed, and despite having a heavy workload in his own county, he has, without hesitation, gone over to other counties to help manage caseloads in those areas as well. Our dispatchers know that he is one of the officers that they can call, and whenever, for whatever, he's going to drop what he's doing to go make sure that the public gets the service that they need at that time. His peers know that he doesn't just have a very good technical knowledge of his job, but he's also got the true passion to pursue the mission, to protect the resources that all of you enjoy every time you go out into Michigan's great outdoors. Aside from the great field work that CO Ulberg does, he fills a number of different roles for us, and he's done this over the years. He serves as a district recruiter, an instructor at our training academies. He serves as a field training officer for when our recruits do get out into the field. He also has served as defensive tactics and firearms instructor, having impact not only on younger officers, but also our veteran officers. And it's those type of engagements with the people across our division that he has a very big, lasting impact on our folks. Aside from that, he's active in his community. He routinely engages with the various outdoors groups in his county. He also makes sure to participate in some of the what I think are important activities come holiday time, including Shop of the Hero events and Stuff a Truck events for our officers, organize events, and solicit toy donations and see if we can fill up a patrol vehicle with toys to make sure that get dispersed out to underprivileged children. I probably missed a couple of things as far as the actual roles that Justin plays, but going back to his field work, I'll highlight just one interesting and noteworthy case that I saw in his write-up. He became aware of a TikTok video, and I'm just going to say that he wasn't scrolling TikTok on his own time. It just eventually brought to his attention. The TikTok video was reported to him well after the fact when this incident took place, but it portrayed individuals that were dumping very large numbers of trout and other fish out of a garbage bag. So despite the time delay in learning about this video, he was able to conduct a very good investigation, identify the individuals involved, put the evidence together, and work with the prosecutor's office to obtain charges, which resulted in a good, successful prosecution. So again, just one little example of the type of casework that he's known for. And with that, I'd like to wrap it up by sharing a quote that Sergeant Ginn, when he submitted this nomination, Sergeant Ginn shared a quote that Justin made. It was during a late season waterfowl patrol on Lake Michigan, and as you can imagine, December waterfowl patrol, Lake Michigan, probably not ideal conditions that most people want to be out in. But what Justin stated at the time is, we need to remember who we work for and what they want us out here doing. And I think that really encapsulates Justin's attitude towards this profession. He is out there to serve the public, including each and every one of you. And I think it really shows the fact that he's got service over himself in mind as he goes about his day-to-day work. Lieutenant Thayer, Sergeant McGinn, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Chief, I think you covered it. I think you covered it very well. Again, appreciate you mentioning the family back here because that's a support network. One of the things that's unique about our job is that we don't leave work. It's there all the time. Our officers work from our homes, take their patrol trucks home so they can respond to critical incidents at any time. So we bring our work home a lot of the time, and it's a balancing act between family and work a lot of the time. So I appreciate it. I'm always reminding the officers. I'll remind you again, Justin, your family deserves just your hard work too, just like we do. We appreciate how you balance that. You do a really nice job at it. So thank you, and thank you to Heather and the boys.
And as is the case with most of our officers, Justin declined to make a speech. They prefer to just ride off into the sunset. So with all of that, I am proud to recognize Conservation Officer Justin Alberg as the 2024 Chicago Safari Wildlife Officer of the Year.
After our next presentation, we'll take a short break for a photograph. Louise, on behalf of the Commission and the Department, thank you to Chicago Safari for your hard work, and she was also a fellow commissioner in the past, so thank you for your volunteerism in that regard.
Madam Chair, just a comment. Louise, it's great to see you, and welcome you back to the Natural Resource Commission. I thoroughly enjoyed serving with you while you served. I'm really glad that you continue this effort on recognizing conservation officers in the state of Michigan and others. But you were an instrumental part of the Natural Resource Commission, and I commend you. Thank you.
So Michigan Bow Hunters Association 2025 Conservation Award. I'd like to call for Bob Jones, the president of Michigan Bow Hunters Association, for this presentation.
John? Lance? So last year in 2024, the members of Michigan Bow Hunters tasked our board creating a conservation award to be given away to somebody that's gone over and above their normal call of duty. And so we put some criteria together, and I'm really happy to announce that unanimously our board decided that the first recipient of this award should be Chad Stewart. What the award says on here is, in honor of more than a decade of distinguished service to the natural resources and the people of the state of Michigan, demonstrating extraordinary dedication and perseverance. I had a great opportunity last year, as some others here in the room as well, working with Chad during the DMI. The amount of time and effort that you put in to that, and I know it wasn't just you, Chad, you had a whole team, people, Sarah and Brooke and others that put that team together. But it was an enormous effort, and the time you spent away from family, weekends picking up, time on the phone. I know you spent hours with me on the phone. All of us trying to get it right and make the right decisions. It's very much appreciated, and we feel you're very deserving for this, Chad.
Congratulations. Those of you who know Chad know how hard he works. He's done this job for a decade, and it's with great emotion that I say, I wish I had 100 Chads in my fleet here. But the thing that amazes me most about Chad is this is a thankless job. There's always so many people with different opinions, and that's fine. But Chad deals with them all, and every day someone's unhappy with him. So every day he has to deal with that, and he does it with great, great pride. And he always stays calm and appreciates all of the people giving him the comments so he can do a better job. And also, what's most important to me is staff love him and they respect him, and so it's easy to work with him. And I don't know if you guys know this, but nationally, Chad is recognized as a leader in the deer management area. So we are very lucky to have him here in Michigan. And I know he doesn't like the spotlight, so I'll stop, but congratulations, Chad.
Thanks again. Would you like to say anything, Chad?
Sorry, I'm not used to having people say nice things. Wow, thank you. Means a lot, and I just turned it over and saw more, and it brought up the signatures and it brought up more emotion. So thank you for this. I'll cherish this always.
Right. Thank you. Commissioners, we're going to take a 5-minute recess to go out and have a photo op.
No, he is.
Folks, would take your seats. I appreciate it. Director, before we turn it back over to you, I failed to mention that Commissioner Dave Nyberg is excused today. He has another commitment. So with that, it's back to you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Randy Claremont for Inland Guide Program one-year review. Randy?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Director. Good morning, Chair Humphreys and Commission. It's my sincere pleasure to not only introduce the speakers for the Inland Guide Program, but also the following program with the Centrarctic Committee update. So I'll start by saying for the Inland Guide Program, we have 2 staff members from our Charlevoix Fisheries Station, the Lake Michigan Fish Station. Chris Kemp, who started with us in 2021. Chris started with the grass carp control and management plan implementation, and then later moved it just in 2023 to a lead data analyst for our recreational fishing programs. So Chris has been helping Kendra really analyze the Great Lakes Charter data and all recreational fishing data. Kendra Kozowskis started in 2002, very similar time frame to when I started, and she started as a creel clerk in Northwest Michigan. Kendra didn't know I was going to say this, but Kendra has probably talked to more anglers than most staff in our entire division. She worked almost 20 years as a creel clerk, talking to staff, and then later took over from Donna Westander, who ran our charter boat program. And only 1 year into the job, Kendra, and then with the help of Chris, got dumped on a brand new program. And the legislation that passed in November of 2023 basically said you're going to stand up a program in a matter of months, a new program to assess inland fishing guides. So they're going to speak to you today and really receive a lot of credit for not only standing up a program, but really sharing with you some insight and data that we've never had before. I couldn't even been able to tell you how many inland fishing guides we even had in Michigan, how many people were doing that. And they're going to show you how many we have, what fish they caught, and what data. I also want to just take that moment to also extend appreciation to everybody who helped get that legislation for inland hunting and fishing guides over the finish line. It was a long time coming, so I think it's important to recognize now we have a new program, and this is the benefit of the information that we get. After that, the Centrarctic Committee will be presented by Heather Hettinger. Heather also started as a creel clerk, kind of picked up a theme that a lot of our staff worked initially as creel clerks to interview anglers. And she started in 2004 in Southern Lake Michigan ports, but then later in 2009 she moved first as a fish biologist in Veriga, and then to the Central Lake Michigan Management Unit in Traverse City is where Heather is located. She is co-presenting today with Matt Diana. Matt Diana is a senior biologist out of our Southern Lake Michigan Management Unit, and he is the co-chair of both the Centrarctic, which Centrarctic is really the panfishism and bass species, as well as our SOSIT, our pike and muskie committees. He represents us at the North Central Division of the American Fisheries Society, been with us for 8 years, and spent some time prior to that as a research biologist with the Illinois Natural History Survey. So if I could have both Chris and Kendra come up and start the presentation on this brand new reporting of the Inland Fishing Guide Program.
Thank you, Randy. And good morning, Commissioners, Director. Thanks for inviting us today to speak about, give an update kind of on the Inland Sport Fishing Guide Program. As Randy said, this program started about a year ago, so we'll do kind of a one-year review. And I'm going to jump in first here. I'm going to start with giving some history and background and providing a timeline of the process from legislation to implementation. And then I'll also share some reporting and licensing details and current licensee statistics. And then Chris is going to summarize some of the initial guide data that we have received and talk about some possible ways that we can integrate this new data to better inform future management decisions. So a little background here. Inland fishing guides in Michigan have had some requirements over the years, mainly permits for launch use, pilot license if they were using a boat. There was never a requirement for the guides to hold a state guiding license or to report their guiding activity to the state. And conversations about this started more than a decade ago. That was initiated and supported by MCCC, the Michigan United Conservation Club, and other statewide hunting and fishing groups. These discussions and the resulting proposed legislation tie bar hunting and fishing together, as Randy mentioned, because some people do both kinds of guiding just for consistency's sake. Since both guiding industries were growing, and there was little known about how many were guiding, where trips were occurring, what was being harvested, caught, the idea of creating licensing and reporting system was proposed, and the DNR did support and serve as technical advisors during this time. So fishing groups supported the idea because it would help to add credibility to the guiding industry while creating accountability for guides. Inland guides are now required to meet certain standards and give back data, which will help to manage the fisheries they rely on. The DNR is providing a list of inland guides on our website, which I think helps add to credibility. These requirements also serve to increase safety, both for the guide and the client, requiring background checks, first aid CPR certification, and for the guides to carry first aid kits during their guided trips. And as you know, there are 11,000 inland lakes and tens of thousands of miles of rivers and streams in Michigan. So the DNR was interested in the information that the guides could provide to help inform management decisions. This new source of data will be really helpful, especially during a time frame where budgets are tight and inland creel surveys are rarely conducted. So inland legislation was proposed multiple times, going back many years, going back to 2016. The legislation went through different forms with varying requirements over the years. There was some difficulty in getting legislation passed, in part because some thought proposed requirements were too burdensome on the industry, like higher fees and insurance requirements. The latest reintroduction, Senate Bill 103, was introduced in March of 2023. That bill was tie bar to commercial hunting guide legislation. That was Senate Bill 104. And these bills would amend NREPA, the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act of 1994, and would set requirements for sport fishing and hunting guides, while stipulating that the NRC has exclusive authority to regulate these activities. That was Senate Bill 105. These bills passed both the House and Senate in the summer and fall of 2023, were signed into law the end of 2023, then in December, and then by February 2024, Public Act 220 was effective. This act holds the requirements for guides that I'll get into more detail about later, those requirements. After legislation passed, the department crafted and adopted Fisheries Order 255. That was February of last year. This order sets reporting requirements for inland sport fishing guides and also charter boats and state licensed commercial fishers. It sets the frequency of reports, the manner in which reports are submitted, the information required to be in those reports. And then by March 1st, 2024, the licensing portion of the program was ready. Licenses went on sale in March. Along with that, we needed to develop and create an application and approval process to make sure applicants were meeting all requirements before being offered the opportunity to obtain the license. April 1st, 2024 would be the day I'd say the complete inland sport fishing guide program was up and running with the reporting system completed and guides being able to report their guiding activity. So as Randy kind of mentioned, department implementation had to happen really fast. A lot of coordination and work went into getting licensing and reporting ready. After legislation passed in late 2023, Fisheries Division formed an inland guide committee. We met weekly for the next few months to discuss, plan, and implement the requirements associated with the anticipated law. This was a cooperative effort that involved multiple divisions and our external vendor. The committee included representatives from fisheries, including our chief, fisheries research section, our communications team. We had a member from marketing outreach licensing, also representatives from law enforcement division, and Electric Edge, that's our vendor, was also part of the committee. We were tasked with developing a statewide program in about 3 months. It had to go pretty quick. In addition to developing licensing and reporting, we needed to develop that application process, discuss law enforcement's role in background checks and enforcement, and also develop a website. So before a license can be obtained, the guide must go through an application process. During that process, the guide attests that they will meet and comply with all licensing and reporting requirements. This application, it's a questionnaire online. It's then reviewed by law enforcement who complete the background check. It passed the applicant. Fisheries, myself, authorizes them to get the license. This questionnaire was developed with help from our vendor, Electric Edge, and is made available in FACS. That's the Fishing Activity and Catch Tracking System. So that's the same reporting system that charter boat captains use, and that is where we were developing inland guide reporting. So licensing details also had to be developed, and it was decided that MICO, that's Michigan Connect, that's the Michigan DNR licensing system, they would hold the guide license. This was not made available at retailers, so guides had to go online to get the license, either on the e-license site or through the Huntfish app. And as mentioned, reporting process was developed in our FACS system. This is where Great Lake captains have been required to report since 2022. And before that, they were still required to report, but it was on paper forms before the electronic system. We wanted to use the same reporting system that was already in place to maintain consistency in reporting. And because there's overlap between the two programs, with many Great Lakes charter captains needing the inland guide license and some of the inland guides also chartering on the Great Lakes, this was also a big time saver and cost effective to use the same system. Our vendor, Electric Edge, was really flexible, accommodating during that time, especially considering the timeline required. There was a 1-month lag between licensing and reporting because accommodation just took a lot of work. There was a lot of testing to be done. You'll see later, though, that the initial influx of guides was large. So it took us some time to onboard all of those people anyway. And Sarah Carlson, a team member in research, helped me a lot in those first couple months. Helped me with both authorizations, setting up accounts. Each new licensee was contacted directly by phone to set up their reporting system and to explain the FACS system to them. I think I do the same thing with Great Lakes charter captains. I call them all directly. I think speaking directly with them really helps, stressing the specifics of reporting the system, but also it gives them the opportunity to ask questions, not just about reporting, but other aspects of hunting, guiding or chartering. And then the Inland Sport Fishing Guide website also had to be developed during this time. This is where people can review requirements. There's a link for the application questionnaire, a link for license purchase. There's other helpful links on there for licenses and permits that may be required. For instance, an inland pilot's license, or information on commercial guide permit. The website also holds an updated list of the inland fishing guides to obtain the license, and we do update that monthly. So now I'll get into some specifics about licensing and reporting. So what is a guide? What isn't a guide? The guide license is required of anyone running paid trips inside the Great Lakes shoreline in any water body greater than 5 acres. Inland waters include both navigable and non-navigable waters, and that's defined by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's required no matter how you're running trips, whether it's on a boat, wading trips, ice fishing trips, pier trips, if you can find a pier inland. It's not required if you are exclusively running Great Lakes trips or Great Lake connecting water trips, because charter captains already have established requirements, including reporting their charter activity to the state. A sport fishing guide license is not needed for members of organizations that are conducting not-for-profit activities to recruit, retain, and promote fishing. It's not required of owners of private land who are assisting anglers on that private land, and it's not required of individuals working under direct supervision of a licensed inland sport fishing guide. It's a little different than a typical DNR license. This is a 3-year license, and the active dates are based on date of purchase instead of your typical DNR license year of April through March. It is $150 for this 3-year license for residents, $300 for non-residents, and this is considered an application fee, and it helps with administration costs. Those who already possess a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license have this fee waived. There's no physical license or boat stickers. It's just an electronic license, like if you had bought your fishing license online. And it allows the guide to guide in any manner inland. It's not based on what boat you're using, but it's the guide's license to use as they choose. As mentioned, there's an application process, so eligibility requirements can be determined. And the requirements include having a valid fishing license for that year, a valid form of identification, and you will need, if you are using a boat, you will need a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license or an inland pilot's license. That latter license will restrict you to non-navigable waters. You must also pass the background check that I mentioned, which confirms you haven't been convicted of a felony or certain fish and wildlife violations in the last 3 years. You also have to be certified in first aid CPR training. You have to agree to carry a first aid kit on your trips and to follow department reporting requirements. And speaking of requirements, the department also has requirements of its own, and that includes posting the names of the licensed guides, keeping that up to date, providing yearly totals of applications received and yearly totals of licenses issued, and all those are currently posted on the Inland Guide website. So as part of the license requirements, they must agree to reporting requirements. They must report their activity monthly, online in the tax system. All guided trips must be entered, a report submitted by the first of the following month. And data collected includes the date of the trip, the mode, which is did the trip occur on a boat, was it a wading trip, ice fishing trip, etc. The number of anglers and hours, which gives us effort, a target species, fishing location, and all species caught, and then catch and release totals. The division did consider the balance between critical information and the reporting burden to the guide when determining what questions to require. Reports must be completed each month, even if you don't guide. So you still have to turn in the report and tell us you did not guide. And for convenience, guides can report up to 12 months in advance in the system. For instance, if they have an off-season, they can report that in advance. And there are penalties for not reporting or providing false information, which include civil fines and eventually revocation of the license. So here we have some statistics on the licenses issued to date. I want to point out that this graph shows new licenses issued. There's been no need for renewals yet because this is a 3-year license. Mainly I want to point out that although the license issuance has slowed down from that initial influx, there continues to be steady interest. We have received new applications and have issued new licenses every week for the past year plus now. We did have a large influx of applications and purchases immediately. I think in the first 3 months, we sold, we issued about 2/3 of the licenses, our total licenses in those first 3 months. And this was in part, we sold so many at first because we did try to notify the public in a variety of ways to get the information out as quickly and widely as we possibly could. So examples included the Inland Sport Fishing Guide website. We did a press release, social media posts, law enforcement informed conservation officers in the field, and they started a campaign of education. Notice was sent to all Great Lakes captains that were reporting to the state because I knew many of them were fishing inland as well. The support staff from all law enforcement districts helped also by letting the pilot license holders know, people who were turning in boat inspection applications. So they spread the word that way. We also work with external partners like the Michigan Charter Boat Association and the Michigan River Guide Association, and they cooperated in notifying their members. We did try to inform people as best as possible. Some people slipped through the cracks. Specifically Coast Guard license holders who exclusively fished inland, especially in non-navigable waters, and people who held no inland pilot's license because they were not using a boat. There were just viewed as no state requirements for these people, so we didn't know who they were or where they were. We did our best to inform as many as possible. So as you can see in the graph, there are, after that initial influx, there are a few spikes in it. After that, I think the one in the summer of last year coincided partially with a social media post that kind of spread through fishing groups. Somebody had pulled the guide list from our website, and that started spreading around, and people were calling me and saying, hey, like, I'm a guide, I'm not on your list. So then I got to educate people that way. And that was partially to, I think the Fall River Guides gearing up to get started, so they started getting their licenses. And then there was another spike last month, April of 2025, and that immediately followed our second press release. So we did like a 1-year press release, and I could tell right away that worked. Like within 4 to 6 hours, I got a big influx of people. And I think it'll be interesting to see how many eventually acquire the license. We really have no idea what to expect, as Randy said, estimating anywhere from 400 to 1,000 inland sport fishing guides throughout the state of Michigan. So since March of last year, 576 licenses have been issued. About a quarter of those were obtained by Great Lakes chartered captains who are already reporting to the state. They were either already running inland trips or wanted to be prepared to do that. Some Great Lakes captains run trips inland seasonally. For instance, in the fall, when the salmon start going into the rivers, they'll chase them in there. Sometimes if the weather's bad on the big lakes, they'll want to go inside. And more than half of the inland guide licensees already possess their U.S. Coast Guard captain's license, which means they can charter on all waters of the state, including Great Lakes. And many of them are setting up Great Lakes reporting in their accounts. So like I said, there's a lot of overlap between the two programs. About 5% of licenses were obtained by guides that reside out of state. That's typically in neighboring states. And I just want to say with the sale of these licenses and the collection of data, we're gaining knowledge of the diversity and popularity of different guiding methods. So it's been surprising to me how many get their license just to do wading trips or just to do ice fishing trips. A couple of you have mentioned that they are bow fishing guides, which I thought was neat. Finally, I'd like to mention that most guides I've spoken to have expressed support for these new requirements. I received a lot of positive feedback, not just from guiding organizations, but from the individual guides. And many of them are interested in helping out even more than we require. And I think it's just been great so far dealing with them. They're a great group. But Chris is going to jump in now and talk about the initial data that's been collected and ways that that data might be used to help Fisheries Division manage our fisheries.
Okay, so as Kendra mentioned, we started receiving guided trip data from April 1st, 2024 through April 1st, 2025. But it took a while to ramp up the guides, right? So we got this massive influx of people signing up for the program, and we're excited this year to have our first full year where we feel like we have all the guides on board. So this is, we're missing probably some of the spring fishery from last year, but let's look at some basic summary stats from the whole program so far. So April 1st, 2024 through April 1st of this year. It's important to think about this in terms of two different water bodies. There's essentially two groups of guides, the river guides and the lake guides. So right there on our table, you can see that in the rivers, we have about 141,000 total angler hours of effort going into the rivers and about 24,000 angler hours going into the lakes. So angler hours is the same, it's the same index of fishing effort that we would use in our creel program. That's just the length of the trip multiplied by the number of anglers on the boat and sum them up. So for reference, the Great Lakes Charter Program on Lake Michigan puts out about 250,000 angler hours into the Great Lake Michigan alone every season, or during our open season. So you can see this is a lot of effort actually going in, particularly into the river fishery, but also into the lakes as well. There's some effort there as well. It's about 20,000 anglers on the rivers and about 4,000 anglers on the lakes. And that comes out to almost 13,000 trips in total that have occurred to date, okay? So the other way we would like to think about this is in terms of seasons. So we have our river anglers, our lake anglers, but we also have two different fisheries, the winter fishery and the open season fishery, right? So the season, April through October, about 112,000 hours on the rivers, of that 140,000 angler hours have occurred. On the lakes, about 14,000, 14 and a half. In terms of number of anglers, it's about 16,000 anglers on the rivers, about 2,700 anglers on the lakes. Number of trips during our open season, about 8,500 trips on the rivers, and lakes about 1,000. During our winter fishery, so a lot of this is going to be lake trips, ice fishing, river fishing during the winter. Rivers, we have about 29,000 angler hours on the rivers, and about 3,000 angler hours on the lakes. About 4,000 anglers taking trips on the rivers and about 1,000 anglers on the lakes. About 2,000 trips occur on the rivers during the winter, and on the lakes about 300 fishing trips during the winter. Okay, so thinking about this spatially, the guides have been really good about reporting. Actually, reporting's been really good with this program during our first year. One concern early on was that, well, if we're making some of this data public facing, we don't want to give away all our fishing holes, and so we're trying to be sensitive to that, so we're going to report this by county when we think about space. But it's important to note behind the scenes that our district biologists actually have access to this information at the water body level. So they can go look at a specific river, go look at a specific lake, and figure out what's happening there. But at this point, we're going to present this to you today at the county level. So across the whole program, so it's April 1st through April 1st, on the left there you see our river trips in the blue. So the dark blue counties are the counties that have received a whole bunch of effort. So you see a lot of this is the western side of the state receiving some really, really hot counties that are really important. On the right there, those are our lakes. So that's our counties that have lakes in them that are receiving the most effort. You see things shift a little bit. A lot of our lake effort happens in the UP, a lot of it's happening in the northwest corner of the state. Okay, so if you just look at this is just the rivers. On the left, you see our.
I got a question with that
yeah.
slide.
Sure.
Can you go back one, please?
Yep.
On the left is the rivers, correct?
Correct.
I don't see Crawford County even mentioned.
Crawford County, you're going to have to remind me where that is in
All
the
right,
state.
so you see Grand Traverse Bays.
Yes, sir.
Go
Yes, I do know
east.
where you're talking about. Yep.
That's where the
So
Assemble and
it's not
Manistee.
mentioned. It's not that it's nothing. It's not that no effort is going on there. It's just that related to Newaygo County, it is not nearly enough to make it colored in or darker, right? So there is effort going on there. It's just not quite as much as some of these others.
Or it's not being reported?
Could be true. This is just what we have in the system so far.
Thank you.
Okay, so inland effort, so this is rivers only. This is the top 10 counties in terms of the effort going on in the county. So top 10 counties going across the x-axis there. The colors are the seasons. So on the right, you'll see those are our winter trips. On the left, this is our summer trips. The dark orange there is total anglers. The light yellow is total number of trips. So Mason County, Wexford County, Newaygo, and some of these others, it starts to tail off after you pretty quickly. So there are some major rivers that dominate our guide community, particularly on the western side of the state. In the winter on the rivers, it shifts a little bit, but still some of those big rivers are dominating our inland guide trips in terms of total effort. Berrien County, so St. Joe starts to see some guided effort, but some of these others start to play a little bit more of a role during the winter. Okay, on the lakes, it starts to spread out a little bit. There's not quite as much of a dominant presence of one or two counties, but you see some of our important counties during our open season there on the right. So Antrim County, Mason, Muskegon, Sheboygan, Grand Traverse starts to see a lot of effort going on in those counties during our open season. During the winter, things sort of turn on their head. Gogebic County is very important during the winter. Mackinac County, Charlevoix, Benzie, Sheboygan, Muskegon, and then tailing off after that. We start talking about what these guides are catching. So this is the same top 10 counties receiving effort across the x-axis. The bar adds up to 100%, and the width of each color is related to a species that these guides are catching. This is both harvest and released. So some of these fisheries, like the steelhead fishery, there's a lot of release angling going on, catch and release. But there in our open season is on the left. This is rivers only. You start to see that Mason County catching a lot of Chinook salmon. Newaygo County start to catch a greater diversity of species, including brown trout. Iona County, we start to see that green bar starts to take over our catch composition. So Iona County starting to catch a lot of smallmouth bass. Berrien, Genesee County, Washtenaw, that'd be the Huron River, starting to catch a lot of smallmouth bass. During the winters on the rivers, there on the right side, you start to see that we're catching a whole lot of steelhead, except for certain places where we see some brown trout angling happening. There's some walleye there in Berrien County, and then Atlantic salmon as well. So we shift our attention to the lakes. During the open season on the right, Mason County, still Chinook salmon being caught in some of our lakes. In Antrim County, we start seeing a lot more yellow perch. Grand Traverse County, there's a pretty vibrant walleye fishery. Muskegon, still walleye, but a greater diversity of species there. Bluegills start to play a role. Manistee County, you start to see smallmouth bass play a role there. There's a lot of bluegill fishing happening in that county as well. And then a lot of walleye in Houghton, Gogebic, Leelanau, and Keweenaw counties. If you look at the lakes in the winter, there on the right, Gogebic County, a ton of yellow perch. This is mainly an ice fishery. And then in Mackinac County, very interesting that we're seeing black crappie caught in the same place as walleye. That's interesting if you think about management of those two species together. Bluegill and northern pike in Mackinac County as well. And a lot of yellow perch happening in Benzie, Muskegon, Sheboygan, and Casca counties. But then in Charlevoix, there's a pretty vibrant Cisco fishery during the winter in Charlevoix County. So we start to think about how the department and the division could use data like this. You start to think about the scarcity of inland creels happening now. A lot of these areas, this is information on a lake or on a system that we just simply don't have. So it's pretty relevant to the department. It gives us some idea of the distribution and abundance of the guides and what their activity is. And over time, as this data set builds and over years, we'll be able to look at long-term trends in species, effort, and catch rates of the guides and their activity. We can look at inland lakes versus inland stream differences as we sort of have here. And we can look at correlations between angler effort, different species metrics that we use all the time, and then drivers of inland guide activity across the landscape. And we could start comparing these to things like our stocking database or our stats and trend surveys and our previous creel surveys when we are able to do things like inland creel. So this is important stuff, I think, moving forward. And it will be useful, particularly as this data set grows over time. So benefits of the program, it provides social aspects. You know, these are recreational anglers and charter guides going out. There are social components to what they're doing, and it provides angler use info that we didn't have before. It provides data for multiple management scenarios. It adds credibility and accountability to the guiding industry, which I think is important. It establishes some baselines of what a Michigan guide is. And then the final point that we like to make is this has already provided some partnerships or potential partnerships for guides and building relationship with these guides that we didn't have before. There's already, you know, some of our management biologists come to us and say, wow, I didn't even realize that there was guiding activity happening in some of these places where we've seen guiding activity, and it allows us to, you know, reach out to the guide, maybe contact them, help them get us some data in places that we didn't have data before. So moving forward, we have some changes to implement, you know, throughout the program, but we're really excited about building the data set over time. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Commissioners, questions?
Yes. Are guiding licenses limited in quantity?
No, not at this time.
Are you looking at trends where there might be an overabundance of guides on a body of water and limiting that body of water?
That's a possibility. I mean, we have that data.
Do you have that ability to make that type of decision?
Well, the authority lies, I believe, with the NRC.
Oh, all right, so we have that
Have
ability.
exclusive authority, yes, to regulate.
And so we would need to know when those trends are occurring to make a quality decision like that.
Sure.
You mentioned that a resident license is $150. Is that for all 3 years?
Yes.
And who determines any price increases and to what degree, or is that legislated?
I'm not certain.
It's set in statute.
It is, so there's a maximum amount that one could, there's a ceiling to it.
Yeah, those price points are set in statute. Hunting and fishing, they don't change over time.
So no cost of living adjustment.
No, we would support it.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, I found that to be very helpful. It was really informative. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning, Commissioners, Director. As Randy mentioned, Matt and I are going to kind of take turns with this presentation. We're here basically to give you an update on where we are at with the formation and implementation of a Central Committee. A number of you will recall that over the past few years, we've had numerous conversations about forming species committees for both black bass and panfish. So hence why both Matt and I are here. I started out as the chair of the Black Bass Committee. Matt here was destined to be the chair of our Panfish Committee. And once we started discussing the formation of these committees and looking at the overlap, we decided to go with a joint Central Committee and decided that since the lift on these committees is typically quite high, and we saw some level of need for potentially some breakouts for the two species, we decided to co-chair the two committees so that we could each kind of concentrate on one set of species and give those some more intentional focus. So a little history here. So we formed a Black Bass Committee back in 2022, and this was kind of in response to some new staff members coming on board who had interest in studying bass. We saw some increased interest from anglers with some bass conflict issues, whether it was conflict with other species, particularly brown goby, or conflict with other anglers. We saw some tournament concerns there as well. So we decided to form the Species Committee. It was one of the few species that we did not have an internal committee for. So we went ahead with that charge. We met twice in that year.
we developed a terms of reference document. And at the same time, Matt and a few other staff were having similar discussions in regards to panfish. And so Matt and I met at a couple of meetings. We were each giving presentations about the formation of these committees, and we sat down and said, you know, it really kind of makes more sense if we discuss these fish together. Both panfish and black bass belong to the same family of fishes, centrarchids. A lot of our concerns, especially when it comes to habitat and conflicts, are very similar, different in the details, but very similar in concept. And when we sat down and looked at who was already on the black bass committee versus who was going to be interested in being on the panfish committee, we saw a lot of staff overlap. So in the interest of being efficient with staff time and feeling like we would have more robust discussions and more legitimate reasons to meet in person and take up a lot of time, we decided to merge the two committees together into one. So current actions. Since we made that initial decision to merge the two together, we have had an official Centrarchid committee meeting. We had that at the end of February. During that meeting, we took the time to take the draft panfish terms of reference with the approved black bass terms of reference, merge those two together. We have initial approval for those. They're going to be discussed at management team here next week, I believe. So we sat down and we discussed with the staff who were in attendance if they wanted to remain on the committee, what their areas of focus were, identified any additional staff members who would be of benefit. We tried to make sure we had representation from all of our areas, whether it be management units across the state, research section, our regulations and invasive species team also has representation on this committee. We really started having conversations about what this committee's goals and priorities might look like, and how, in the state of Michigan, how and why Centrarchid management is really important.
Thanks, Heather. Now, Heather gave us some background. I kind of wanted to back up and talk about, why do we think Centrarchid management is so important. And Fish Division folks are kind of sick of me saying this, but they've heard me say this another time. Arguably, Centrarchids are the most important fishery division. I'm going to kind of back that up a little bit here. They're an entry-level fishery, right? When we talk about Centrarchid, we talk about bass, bluegill. We kind of panfish as, or sunfish in the guides is called, as bluegill, other component species like pumpkin seed, rock bass, and it also includes crappie. So that's kind of a species that's often managed separately, but in Michigan we manage it collectively as panfish. So. This picture here, these are my two daughters. This is their first fish, bluegill, right? So it's an entry-level fishery. A lot of people, I'm sure that everybody has similar pictures with their kids or themselves catching their first bluegill or bass or whatever it is. So, this is what's recruiting anglers to Michigan. You don't have to believe me. Our creel data really supports this. If you look at our inland creel data, 95% of people are harvesting panfish. 95% harvested fish are panfish. So they're obviously a large component of our inland fisheries. When we did a survey of anglers that I'll talk a little bit more about later in 2022, over 86% of all license holders reported targeting panfish during that year. And a big portion of that 86% that didn't report fishing at all in that year. So most anglers, almost all anglers, at least spend a little bit of time seeking these fish sometime during a fishing year. So it's accessible. You can fish from shore. You can go to Kmart, or Kmart's not there anymore. Walmart. You can buy, a $5 pole and reel kind of setup, and be out fishing for bluegill, bass, anything like that. They're easy to catch. The food quality is excellent, and it's got a summer and a winter fishery. So, in addition to just kind of more of the panfish side, if you look at our bass tournament, we have data from a more recent survey work from our tournament information system. Tournaments are required to register, so we know how many people are out fishing in bass tournaments. And we have over 301 water bodies, 2,568 tournaments within 2004. And that's adding up to 59,000 angler days. Just in perspective, it's almost 5 times the amount of effort we're seeing in the guide reporting, for example. So people are fishing for bass. And that's just tournament fishing. It doesn't count recreational fishing. It doesn't count folks that are out there pre-fishing or fishing in a not organized fashion. But just in that tournament system, that's over 120,000 bass that are being weighed. That's not anything. There we go. So in Michigan, how are we managing sunfish? I'll shift to sunfish because I'm kind of the sunfish side of this. We spend a large amount of our effort with our field survey data in lakes, focusing on panfish population. Our status and trend surveys are set up to look at panfish, all species, but in a large respect, that's often dominated by panfish and bass. The population goals, they vary pretty significantly. About like some lakes can promote really good panfish growth, some can't. And our management goals differ based on that as well. Despite that, we don't really have a robust management plan that talks about how we're going to manage these populations. And there's really not a whole lot of limited management options. We don't have different regulation suites for panfish or bass. We have very few alternative regulations, and they're only deployed on a very small scale. Despite that, we have some pretty significant management issues when it comes to panfish. Specifically, reduced size structure. Our lake is full of too many small fish. Panfish, bass, and bluegill are very density dependent, which means that if they get overpopulated, they compete for resources and they don't grow well. So how do we manage our lake to better fisheries in lakes when we see these problems happen? They're also subject to overharvest and stunting, which means that they're maturing earlier and they're not growing well. So we need some options in order to deal with it. We don't really have any guidance at the statewide level.
So very similarly to what Matt just described for panfish, so we use our status and trend survey protocols to evaluate bass for the most part. We also have about a dozen special regulation lakes in the state of Michigan, and that's a 10-inch minimum size limit on bass. Most of those lakes have now had that regulation in place for about 15 to 20 years. So we have enough generations of bass in place now that we're going in and starting to do some evaluations on how successful that regulation has been on those particular lakes. I myself have 2 lakes in my area that we have that special regulation on, and this will be our second round of surveying on those water bodies to see what, if any, notable changes that regulation has produced within the size, structure, and age on bass. The populations and management goals for bass can vary across the state of Michigan. We have a lot of spatial differences in spawn timing, in when bass are active and when people are targeting them for harvest or for release. So we have some interest in looking at developing management goals that are more in tune to where that particular body water is located at spatially in the state. Again, we have no management plan. We don't have that toolbox for regulations. We have a couple of varying regulations. We have statewide regulation for bass. We have those 10-inch MSL lakes that I just mentioned. Lake St. Clair has a different harvest season, as does the Beaver Island Archipelago. So we have a few different regulations, but we don't necessarily have biological protocols in place to assign water bodies to, for those regulations. And again, I touched on these management issues a little bit earlier, but we have interest in developing our informational database on what competition and predation looks like in these bass lakes, what our angling pressure looks like. Matt talked about that tournament registration system. That's been exceptionally helpful in allowing us to look at which water bodies are most heavily targeted by at least tournament anglers. And again, these spatial impacts on spawning time versus our harvest seasons that are currently in place.
So we've made some strides to try to understand. One of the questions is, do the people of Michigan want any kind of additional management for panfish population? And when we conducted a survey in 2022, we actually saw that a significant number of people were satisfied with how panfish populations are. So the question was, is it worth complicating regulations and things like that on a really basic level fishery and putting up barriers to entry? I talked about how important that entry is to panfish fishermen as far as recruiting anglers. So we did a survey of 1/3 of all license holders in 2022. We used 1/3 because we adjust on the steelhead survey that you've seen a lot of information on. We're worried about survey fatigue from doing too much. So we did 1/3. We received over 8,700 respondents, so a pretty good number of people reported to the survey. And I think that's a testament to how many people are interested in panfish fisheries. So, and like I said, in general, anglers reported satisfaction. Despite that, they did support more active management without defining what that was. So, we asked a number of questions, and I have a whole series of talks just about this, and we're working at publishing the results so that it's in a much more accessible format. Just to kind of summarize, people were supportive of the idea of some additional management in order to, on certain lakes. We're not talking about changing statewide regulations. We're talking about very specific management techniques that can be used in specific situations where we might be able to do something about what the panfish population looks like. So, and we saw support for a number of different regulations, but that support level declined as we started getting more restrictive. The number one reason people reported through fishing was to catch enough fish for the elk. The number two was to catch big fish. So there is kind of a dichotomy here. We don't want to limit the number of fish people can harvest to the point that they can't get that yield that they're fishing for. But they do have some enjoyment out of catching bigger fish. And there are people who target panfish, quality panfish, and big panfish as part of their recreation. It's actually kind of a growing field of quality panfish fishing. Large, 10-inch plus. And like I said, there was reported from the anglers some concern about complicating regulations. We're definitely sensitive to that. So we have to take an approach that wouldn't cause the barrier to those entry. I think that's a big important thing. And during this process, my phone number was included with the survey, and I talked to a lot of anglers from all over the state with varying concerns, and got a lot of good feedback that we're going to kind of bring to this process.
So Matt, to that point, recognizing that some lakes have stunting, other lakes have overabundance, other lakes have the lack of abundance.
Right.
In your view at this point, I mean, obviously data and survey work needs to be conducted. As far as the fishery is concerned, not so much about the angler, but the fishery, do you think further regulation needs to at least be considered?
It could be, and I think that's kind of what we're proposing to do with this committee is to dive into that. We really haven't looked at it really seriously, other than just to determine that there is some interest from the anglers to try it. So, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute about different types of regulations we talked about in that survey. So we want to get the data. There's been a lot of work in Minnesota and Wisconsin with what they call their Quality Panfish Initiative, where they've looked at restricting bag limits as a way of promoting keeping some big fish in the population, shifting size structure, and it's worked really well. So we think that there's a similar model we could use here. I don't think it needs to be done on a large scale, but I think there might be management scenarios where we would want to implement some sort of experimental regulation. So that'd be something we'd have to work with our committee to come up with a suite of options that we can consider, and then the commission to kind of decide how we want to implement that going forward. So,
thank you.
Yeah. Basically, this question is the one I mentioned. It's just, we asked anglers, would you be supportive of some sort of management on certain lakes to manage for bigger but potentially fewer? And what we saw was most people were supportive or strongly supportive, with a very smaller group, less than 20% of people ended up on the not support side. This figure is a little more complicated, but basically, the greener the system, the more support, the redder the less support, right? So we asked people, based on bag limits, would you support experimenting with a 15 fish daily bag limit? And they said, yes, 70% of people said, yes, it's an option. I'm interested. A lot of people reported in the comments for the survey or just in phone calls that they thought 25, which is current regulation, is just too broad and possibly too much, more than somebody thinks. That's subjective, but it showed up in the survey that people are at least willing to look at that. Less so at 10%, that split more 50, or 10 fish, that split more 50-50. But once we got down to 5 fish, or catch and release only, there was very little support for those rates. So like I said, as we get more restrictive, there's less support. That's something we need to do. In Minnesota, when they implemented this, they had a 10 fish and a 5 fish bag, 15 and a 10 and a 5, I think. And the 5 fish bag was not well supported by anglers. But it did a lot to change the shift in the size structure. So it works, but does that mean that's something we want? So right now, the committee is trying to develop what their tasks are. We're going to take this information, we're going to try to publish the panfish survey results. We're going to publish the panfish survey results. I presented the data at a number of different public meetings, so people have seen this information. We're going to try to do a better job getting press releases out about it. And then ultimately, I think we want to develop a panfish management plan, which would talk about all of our management options, how things are being done in other states, what's the research behind it, and what are we going to propose going forward as far as potential suite regulations or management techniques. It doesn't have to be regulations. It could be other techniques. We use walleye stocking, for example, as a way to thin out fish, and it works really well. Walleye are just a little bit limited in how many we can produce and what we can do. So the committee will be a sounding board for questions when people have it, as far as how do we manage bluegill better in our lakes? Is there something we could do as far as optional harvest, like should our lake association be releasing the bigger fish, things like that. So we want to come up with kind of statewide expertise that we can provide our biologists for better managing catfish populations. And ultimately, the goal would be to just more actively, whether it turns into regulations or just turns into a kind of a management recommendations, our committee would help manage panfish populations better.
Question in that regard as well. So will you be looking at the bass recruitment as well as the panfish recruitment relative to gobies and the taking of fry and egg once an adult is removed from the nest during fishing season?
We just had a great discussion about this last week at the Warmwater Committee meeting.
I wish I was there.
I know, I'm surprised you weren't, but.
Well, I had a scheduling conflict. I really wanted to be there.
Yeah, so we had a good discussion, and one of the things that we're actively doing and want to continue to do is try to identify, number one, concerns like that lake associations are bringing to us, and number two, identify ways that we can use our existing data or identify ways to get more targeted data to get answers to those questions. We have some data. We would like to update that data. You know, a lot of things from when that data was initially collected to now, a lot of things in the ecosystem of those lakes have changed. Some of it has remained stable. So we'd like to get in there and potentially do some creel surveys, look at angler effort, what patterns and trends anglers are seeing, get in there, do some additional bass age and growth data, and kind of update our knowledge base and see if we can't start getting more focused answers to questions like that. So that bass goby interaction, especially on our bigger inland lakes, is definitely a charge that the Bass Committee is, we know it's a substantial question with a lot of lake associations, so it's one that we're definitely going to pay attention to.
So how long might it take for good data to get collected and surveyed and understood and researched to kind of formulate a better conclusion than where we are today?
So it sort of depends. I mean, we're headed into our lake survey season right now. Like I mentioned, some of us are diving into those 10-inch MSL lakes. So we're going to start to look at how that has impacted. We are revitalizing, hopefully, our Great Lakes survey information, our smallmouth bass project in northern Michigan with Beaver Island, Watershaw's Point, and East Grand Traverse Bay. That sampling hasn't been done. We had a staff retirement. But the research station is interested in picking that back up again, so we're working on developing that. We're in the process of collecting data. The issue becomes a little bit is we have lake associations that are very interested in specific lakes. But we've already got a schedule of lakes that we're slated to survey. So we're working through that list, and that list, we like to get in lakes when issues pop up. We also can't disregard that list. It's part of how status and trend works. So we have to kind of play a little bit with our available time and when we can get in and do specific water bodies. But all of our units have a number of status and trend surveys that are coming on deck for this summer. A lot of us have some targeted bass work that's going to start this summer. So we're getting there. Is it going to be overnight? No, but we're accumulating that data as we go.
So on those lakes that have association members that are concerned about this. And we recognize staff time and dollars are at a premium. And those associations have dollars to spend. Is discussion ensuing regarding hiring a fisheries biologist, but not from the department, to do the work that you would typically do?
I will say.
And have them hire them to do it?
Yeah, so that does not come up as a specific option. We've talked with a number of lake associations, and it did come up last week as well, about things like increasing water quality sampling. So things that the lake associations can do that we can implement and help them with right now. So things like additional water quality sampling, working with riparians to do some, habitat improvements along shoreline, lessening, armoring, lessening chemical treatments, those kinds of things. So there are, and it's this slide actually, so great segue.
Before you move on, Heather,
Yeah.
I just want to add that unlike some other species where we have data gaps, our status and trends program really well samples panfish and bass. And one thing we've never had before is an ability to do some of these statewide analyses. And the committee does provide some opportunity for that. So we're hoping that that's the kind of question we can take up, using our past data to a certain extent, looking for opportunities to bring new data in that answer specific questions. But we can start to do things like look at lakes with and without gobies and if there's trends. And I think that's absolutely some of the charges we're talking about developing here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's, every unit's a little bit different. We have some units that have done these status and trend surveys on these larger lakes multiple times. We have others like my unit where we're just now getting into some of these lakes for a second time. So as Matt alluded to, we have a lot of great data, and now we're to the point where we have enough that it's comparable statewide at this point in these larger bodies of water. But yeah, so the thing with both of these species groups that we kind of have in common is habitat issues. So things like working with lake associations to discuss doing these weed treatments in a very thoughtful manner, working with riparians and Eagle on shoreline alteration permits, so seawalls, riprap, that kind of thing, having local conservation districts and lake associations work with their membership to encourage more softer bioengineered shorelines, and then additional habitat improvement projects. So we have worked with some of these larger lakes on pretty robust habitat structure projects. Wisconsin has a project called Wisconsin Fish Sticks Model, so we've encouraged some projects along those lines, and again, softening shorelines with more biologically appropriate bioengineering. All things that are going to impact both bass and panfish in a positive manner, and things that we can work with lake associations and riparians right now to get done while we're still doing some of this data collection and looking into these more specific questions. So next steps. So with this committee, we really want to make sure that we're having about 2 meetings a year. We want to try to have one meeting in the late winter as we're gearing into our field survey season. And we want to make sure to have one meeting late summer after we've completed all of our lake surveys for the year. So all this stuff that we've just seen in the field is fresh in our mind. We want to sit down and work with Fish Division Management Team to develop a list of committee charges. We're looking at developing a list of relevant ongoing fisheries work so that we kind of have a living library of who's doing what projects, so we have a better idea of where to look for that data that's currently being conducted. We want to continue to work with staff on committee and management staff, stakeholders, and our research crews to develop goals and objectives for planning upcoming survey work, whether it be this year, next year, or beyond. And so much, similar to panfish, Matt mentioned, eventually we'd like to discuss the possibility of a species management plan for bass as well. As you can see from what Matt presented, we have a little bit more angler-focused data when it comes to panfish, so we're probably a little bit closer on a panfish plan than we are on a black bass plan, but similar to what Matt did with panfish, we'd like to go down that road with bass management ideas with the public as well. So a little bit further behind on the bass, but we ideally would like to develop management plans for both groups. Was that a question? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Craig, can you come up and give us a quick summary of the legislative activity we've seen this last week? Thank you.
Hey, Commissioners. Craig Burnett, Director of Legislative Affairs. So there's been a lot of activity moving on, but I think the most important probably to focus on is one you've hit home on several times in recent months, Director, is a need for funding increase. And the Senate Appropriations Committee, chaired by Senator Cherry and Minority Vice Chair Senator Homestead, recently introduced legislation that would impact license fees. And again, with the stakeholder group, I think it's important to be transparent on what's going on in the legislature right now. So we're still reviewing the legislation. There's a lot in it, but there's modest increases to a lot of the license fees. One is beer license moving from $20 to $25. But with that, there's a discount for antlerless that would be equal to 80% of the license fee. So it essentially would bring it down to $5. So fishing license moving up a small amount. Again, this is the proposal in the Senate. It's a little different than what we did in the executive recommendation of the governor's budget. But we're very thankful for the Senate, especially bipartisan in the Senate, showing that they understand our budget, they see the need, that we have not had a raise in our license fees for over a decade, and just keep up with inflation, keep the programs we're looking to do that are so important to our stakeholders, that we need the funds to be able to do it. So again, the Senate bills are Senate Bill 276 and Senate Bill 277. You can find them online at legislature.mi.gov. They're both, I think one's about 31 pages. The second bill, that is the Senate Homestead bill, what that will do is all the discounts, like the senior discount, that will make sure that the department's held, we're kept whole for that dollar. So again, like the antlerless fee, the reduction to $5, what that second bill is hoping to do is make sure the department gets the other $20, so that we're still getting that full license fee, but again, our users are keeping the discounts that the Senate believes that is necessary and very much desired by the stakeholders. So again, we still are looking at a position. It's a long bill. It's a little different than what we proposed, but again, we're thankful to see that there is support in the legislature to properly fund our department.
I'd just like to make a comment. The discounts, funding those discounts were really intended in the last two license packages, if I'm not mistaken, but unfortunately haven't been funded, even though it calls for legislation. And that's important when we discount licenses for various reasons. The department get that funding, not only because it's revenue that we'd like to come into the department, but the other part of it is for federal excise tax match. So we get our full appropriation, our per lot on the federal dollars. So.
Very true. Craig, there's nothing in the House as of yet?
Not right now. The House is, we're still waiting on the House to introduce their budget. We've been having a lot of conversations with our chair over there, but we're not really sure on the timeline for their budget to come out or what it's going to look like.
So has anything been written, just not publicized yet, or do you even know that?
I'm sure they're working on it. We've not received a copy of it yet, but I know the House is actively working on their budgets.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Thank you. That concludes your report?
That is it.
All right. I think we've earned a very short break if people would like to take it. So why don't we try and be back in our seats in 10 minutes. Okay, we are going to move into our public appearance portion, and I'd like to introduce Brooke Connolly to walk us through the rules and regulations of public appearances and your comments.
Hi, good morning, everyone. For those of you that signed up to speak before the end of the day last Friday, you have 5 minutes to give your comments today. And for those of you that did not sign up before last Friday, you can have 3 minutes to give your comments. If you did not fill out a card, but you do want to provide comments today, Amanda in the back has some cards, and you're more than welcome to do that. When you have 1 minute left, I'll hold up the 1 minute sign, and when your time is up, I will hold up the time please sign, and we ask that you please bring your comments to a close. And if you wouldn't mind stating your name on the record, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
I failed to mention, we're opening public comments up at 11:17 this morning. And first up is Marcy Troger to talk about rules and regulations. Marcy?
Hello, I'm Marcy Troger. I've been reviewing the prevalence of wolf poachings in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. It's clear that this is an ongoing problem. The recent update on one prolific wolf poacher, as described by the journalist, cited wolves snared, trapped, and shot, among many other animals. Beyond those publicized, it's not difficult to find incidents of wolves killed because of specious claims of thought it was a coyote. Then there are the deaths occurring through the wolf's innate curiosity being mistaken for aggression, as likely happened in a Wisconsin case last year. That animal was shot in its face with birdshot, resulting eventually in what must have been an agonizing death. We can reasonably assume that many more of these lethal incidents occur which never make it into public view. In the Wolf Management Plan of 2022, you will find on page 38 of this item, recommend modification of law at the state level to make penalties for illegally killing a wolf commensurate with other highly valued species with similar legal status, end quote. Versions of this iteration predate to 2008 and 2015. I don't believe any such action was ever initiated. Do we even know why? How about now? Against this backdrop, it's disturbing to see a well-known hunt group use its bully pulpit and the veneer of legitimacy that affords to state they, quote, fully support hunting and trapping wolves UP-wide, end quote, even giving oxygen to the flaming falsehood of wolves being behind declining deer numbers. This is unfortunate, but not surprising, given that body's self-evident disdain toward any ethical consideration for our wild ones. The truth is, wolves and coyotes are playing their essential role in nature's own management plan. The hyperbolic and persistent claims of havoc wreaking by these animals smells more like excuses to try and justify more hunts. This seeming obsession with killing our wild canines and wholesale disregard for their coexistence is particularly poignant right now for coyotes as the sport kill community demands to kill more. Science guides us, of course. It's telling us that wolves have achieved symbiosis in our and their environment, that coyotes perform a valid role in the lower peninsula as wolves do in the upper, that numerically our wolves are not critically endangered in the UP at this moment. It is emphatically not saying that since they're doing okay right now, feel free to slaughter at will. This aberrant view is truly misguided. Science, yes, of course, but as the sole arbiter, absolutely not. Our Michigan wolves do not recognize state lines. Wisconsin has mandated hunting and trapping upon delisting. In 2021, hunters and trappers killed 216 of our Great Lakes wolves in a couple of days, blowing by their supposed quota of 119. We don't need the risk of that reckless ignorance here. It would behoove our decision makers in this era of rampant kill sports to recognize the significant and growing number of Michiganders who view our wolves and our wild ones as the sentient co-creatures they are and respect their agency to exist. There is no scientific nor other reason to endorse a wolf hunting and trapping season, nor a 12-month coyote season to capitulate the demands of a strident and science-bereft minority. I close with a respectful reminder to everyone in this debate. An expanding group of mutualists voted in 2014 with a resounding rejection of wolf hunting and trapping in Michigan. No still means no. Thank you.
B. Freelander. Good morning. Instead of good afternoon.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bea Friedlander with Attorneys for Animals, and I'm speaking today about the Canada geese capture and euthanize trial program about to go into effect. And this is in lieu of the relocation program. I refer you to my written comments for full discussion. The rationale for this is based on a misplaced reliance on AVMA guidelines for using CO2 gas to kill wildlife. The order and its implementation also do not comply with the requirements under the special Canada goose permit issued to the state. DNR defends the use of CO2 to kill nuisance Canada geese. Recently, it's saying that the reason for adopting the program is pretty much solely in response to human-Canada goose conflict. Yet the DNR relies on the representation of those very individuals who perceive geese as problems in order to issue the permit. This is a very small proportion of Michigan's population. Businesses, golf courses, homeowners association, etc., who consider the geese to be so problematic that they want them gassed. This is an exceptional accommodation of a very few individuals, while ignoring the many people who love the geese, or frankly those who don't have a strong opinion but don't like the idea of gassing Canada geese. According to veterinarian Pamela Greenwood, DVM, MS, who practices in the Traverse City area, and I quote, "The term euthanasia is not being properly used. Euthanasia of captive wild animals would fall under this term. AVMA guidelines on euthanasia defines it as, quote, the term is usually used to describe ending the life of an individual animal in a way that minimizes or eliminates pain or distress, end quote." What she's describing is depopulation of a species due to infectious disease. What has not been acknowledged but is noted in the AVAM guidelines is that wild animals experience a significant amount more stress with human interaction and handling. In the description of euthanasia with carbon dioxide, excessive flapping, injury to the bird, as well as potential physical or emotional trauma to the personnel performing euthanasia can occur. In my opinion, this does not minimize pain or distress to the animal. And Dr. Greenwood concludes, in my professional opinion, performing carbon dioxide depopulation on wild Canada geese would create stress and potential injury to the animals. And that's the end of her quote. Does the program comply with federal law? If you look at the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and the special permit and the regulations they're under, I raise 3 issues. First off, the federal special permit specifies a specific number maximum that can be taken. Under our system, reporting is only required at the end of the season each year. The state therefore cannot ensure that the number of geese taken does not exceed. Number 2, the permitted activities will adversely affect other migratory birds because in taking the Canada geese is going to disrupt the environment, and there are, say in Oakland County where one gassing occurred last summer, there are 120 bird species found to co-occur. And finally, the third is the goose management program is patently not intended to relieve or prevent injurious situations. That's another federal requirement. The DNR is using its special Canada goose permit as a pretext to capture and euthanize Canada geese simply for proving to be a nuisance to humans. Ultimately, this is a plan which euthanizes geese in an ineffective and painful manner and could violate law. We ask that you halt this plan and rescind CO Amendment number 9 of 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Cameron Jones.
Good morning. My name is Cameron Jones. I live in Grayling, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. All political power is inherent in the people. That's Article 1 of our Michigan Constitution. Therefore, the only power inherent in government is that which is granted by the people, and that power has limits imposed by them. In 1996, 2 proposals were on the ballot. Prop D, which would have effectively eliminated bear hunting in our state, and Prop G, which aimed to protect our rights by granting this commission the exclusive authority to regulate the taking of game. Prop D was defeated by 62%, and Prop G passed by an overwhelming 69%. Clearly, the people support hunting and fishing, and they do not want regulation of our resources left to the whim of a single individual. More importantly, they demand these decisions to be based in sound scientific management principles. Prop G was codified into law, and that law is MCL 324.40113A, which clearly states several things. That the fish and wildlife populations of the state and their habitat are of paramount importance to the citizens of the state. That those populations depend on wise use and sound scientific management. That the NRC has the exclusive authority to regulate the taking of game, and that the NRC shall, not may or should, but shall, to the greatest extent practicable, utilize principles of sound scientific management in making decisions regarding the taking of game. Nowhere in the authority granted by the people do we see any reference to emotions, political agendas, or social science, nor is there any leeway for the commissioners to make decisions concerning the taking of game based on public perception or anything other than sound scientific management principles. This is the law, and it's unambiguous. Regulations that are enacted by this commission carry the force of law, and violation of these regulations can result in severe legal consequences. So why can some members of this commission violate the law enacted by the people without consequence? That is exactly what some commissioners did when they voted to arbitrarily close the year-round pilot season without applying sound scientific management principles. Many government officials seem to believe they can violate the law because the only recourse the people have is to expend our personal time and treasure to fight a multi-year court case against our own tax dollars in a battle we rarely win. Perhaps it's time for the people to rethink our strategy and start suing individual members of government bodies who violate the laws we enact. I understand the need to hear from stakeholders when making decisions. Citizens of Michigan certainly have a right to be heard. However, I see no reason why this commission should entertain input from out-of-state organizations such as Humane World for Animals, which have a political agenda that has nothing to do with the sound scientific management of our resource. I further question the investment of groups such as HWFA, even if they have members in our state. The sportsmen and women of our state are stakeholders. They've invested countless dollars in the resource, not only through license fees, but also through the purchase of firearms and ammunition, which generate Pittman-Robertson funds that are used to purchase lands and maintain habitats, facilities, and other resources, including many enjoyed by the non-hunting and fishing community at large. Members of groups such as HWFA are not hunters. They contribute nothing to the acquisition or maintenance of the resource, but they want to dictate how or even if we can utilize the resource. Even within DNR, it's unclear who the actual stakeholders are. The memo from DNR dated January 16, 2024 states, the majority of the fur taker user group supports the closure of the season. It fails to identify all the members of the group and does not indicate how it was determined that a majority expressed their support. Are organizations such as HWFA represented in this user group? Was there a vote? If so, where are the minutes of the meeting, including attendance and a record of how each member voted? The citizens deserve to know who's voting away their rights. It's time this commission makes it clear that the antis that you are managing the natural resources of Michigan under the authority granted by the people, and that you will make these decisions based solely on sound scientific data and management principles as directed by the people. You can send that message today and right the wrong you committed a year ago by simply following the damn law and reinstating year-round coyote season. If you can't do that, then perhaps you should resign. And please see my written comments submitted for other things that I did not have time to speak to today. Thank you.
Dave Johnson. Dave Johnson?
You had to leave.
Did he? Okay. Ryan Reynolds, you're up.
I'm not going to speak about any notes, the same thing I've been speaking about for years. A lot of this stuff, 30 years or more. Becky, it's the same stuff we were talking about when you were the director of the DNR. A lot of it is habitat, mostly winter habitat. We have pretty good summer habitat in UP. Our winter habitat is not so good. And I hear talk about, well, we have to get our deer herd down to the carrying capacity of winter habitat. Well, if we do that, we're not going to have enough deer to hunt up there. I can tell you that right now. For the last 30 years, we've talked about habitat. The first commission meeting I ever went to was at the Calumet Theater in Calumet, Michigan. Don Coivisto was the senator. I brought habitat improvement up. Talked to the commission, we're going to do something about it. Here we are 30 years later talking about the same thing, and very little has been done. I'm not saying nothing's been done, but very little has been done. And I know the state talks about, we only own 20% of the land up there, but we do own wintering complexes, and very little has been done in there. I mean, there's been some timber removal, and that's helped, but there's been a thing called scarification up in Farragut by Scaney. We don't know what the results are going to be. That's trying to regenerate hemlock. We all know hemlock and cedar regeneration is a hard process. If you were at the Marquette Commission meeting last fall, the renowned best people in the field as far as regenerating hemlock and cedar talk to us. Cedar is a tough thing to do. Hemlock is not quite as tough, but they're both tough to do. And but we need to do more. We have to do more, because if we cut that deer herd down like some people want to, we're talking about the carrying capacity of the land. We're in trouble. We're in a lot of trouble. We just don't have the winter carrying capacity to carry lots of deer. And I'm not talking about thousands and thousands of deer. I'm talking about a huntable population. This commission, sportsmen's groups, we all got to get on the same page. And there is some work on it by the UP Habitat Work Group. They've done some good things. But again, it takes money, and the department has supported them. And I think we all need to get down and sit down, and we need to come up with something to really push habitat, winter habitat improvement for whitetail deer in UP. Now, saying that, I'm going to get back to shooting antlerless deer along Lake Spear watershed. I told you before, and I tell you again, I think it's a very bad idea. We're one winter away, and we all know we're going to get a bad winter, and some parts of the UP had a very bad winter this year. There was a lot of snow. Northern Moose County, Northern Schoolcraft County, Elder County, Marquette County, we got snow late. We didn't have much snow for most of the winter, but then we really got snow later in the winter. Keweenaw County, parts of Houghton County, Onondaga County, there was a lot of snow. They had a tough winter. So I don't think that our deer are going to rebound. Last year we had a little bit of a rebound because we had the easiest winter I ever remember. So we did have a slight increase in our deer herd last fall. But this year I don't see that happening. Or if it does, it's going to be a very small increase. So we still are in this process of having a declining deer herd and shooting antlerless deer. If you ask all the experts, I'm talking about Don Ozoga, Jim Hamill, Bob Detzer, guys who dealt with deer for many, many years in the UP, all say the same thing. You can't shoot antlerless deer in the deep snowfall zones because you can't afford to lose those deer. So if you take them out of the picture, we're going to end up with what I feared my whole life since I first started hunting. You might walk all day and not find a deer track. And some of the people sitting up there know what I'm talking about. Dave, Jim, you know that years ago it was tough to find a deer track, let alone a deer. Somebody shot a buck, everybody came from many miles around, all the camps. I mean, there was sometimes hundreds of people because that's how few deer we had in those days. I don't ever want to see us get back there. So please, take all of that into consideration. And the thing about habitat improvement, we need to get together now, as soon as possible, and get working on this. Thank you.
Mike Taylor?
Commissioners, and thank Brian for covering most of the stuff that I had in my presentation today. But there are a few things that Brian didn't cover, and one of them is we would like to thank Dave Anthony for being the commissioner that he is, because if we have something that we want to talk about, we can bring it to Dave, whether it's through me and I bring it to Dave. I'm going to tell you about a situation. I was in the barber shop last week. There was 7 guys in the barber shop. This is overwhelming. And I told him, I talked to Dave, and and they were, what's the number one conversation? The wolves. And all 7 of us that were in the barber shop thought that was the number one reason that we have a declining deer herd. Okay, secondly was the fact that, how many predators are there out there that are eating deer? We're losing 100,000 deer a year in the UP. Those are your numbers. Those are the DNR numbers that we brought, that's been brought up. We all talked about it, and Dave, we have to thank you, because I brought those things up to you, and we're talking about them here again today. And most of the guys hunted in Marquette County.
And they were wondering if we are going to have a sustainable herd to hunt in the future because of, number one, the predators, and you take everything else into consideration. We're only one winter away from losing our deer herd up there. I know we do supplemental feeding, and our numbers are way down on the number of deer that we feed. We talked about too, and this goes to you, John. It's your amendment today, and the thing is that when we, as vice chair of the DAC, I think it was the second meeting, we talked about what that group was going to do. And what we thought we were going to do is put together a lot of suggestions and come up with one or two that we could present to the NRC for the upcoming 3-year cycle of regulations. And we all agreed on that. And then at the last meeting, we got sprung up with we're going to have a vote. So, and that vote was to shoot those in the northern high snowfall areas. You have an obligation not only to our natural resources, but to our stakeholders. I represent here today, I'm representing UPSA, I'm representing UP Whitetails, not only in Marquette County, but the 6 other chapters that voted at our central committee not to shoot those in the upper snowfall areas. We have 2,500 members in those 6 chapters. We have over 30,000. We have 64 different sportsmen's clubs in UPSA. That's who you're representing. Not just a few individuals or somebody that is, in Lansing here, trying to make decisions. Did he ask any of his biologists up there what they thought about what was going to happen? He told me he didn't. If I'm getting mad, yeah. I've been fighting this fight for a long time. Becky knows we fought it back in, and when I talked to Commissioners J.R. Richardson and John Matonich and John Madigan, what are we doing? We're fighting it all over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin Root.
All right, name's Justin Root. I'm out of Howell, Michigan. Most of what I'm going to talk about is going to be more for the future of the Lower Peninsula and deer regulations there. Last time I was here, we kind of talked a lot about, we saw some numbers from the DNR about having some pretty bad issues with the herd dynamics, buck-to-doe ratio, arguably the worst of any state with a sizable whitetail population. It's unsustainable long-term for us. And it's made worse every year after hunting season because we're still continuing to take more bucks than we do does in this state, despite adding, in the last, 5 to 10 years, adding another, 4 to 6 weeks of ability to shoot does in this state. So changes need to be made. You're going to upset a group of hunters when you make changes, but again, it's clear they need to be done. The traditional hunter in Michigan, the guys with tradition in Michigan that it's brown, it's down, I'm going to shoot this, buck, because if I don't, my neighbor's going to. The guys that asked, did you get your buck after the opener a gun, and somehow made it taboo to shoot does. They've kind of had their turn, that mentality's had its turn, and it's put us in the position we're in today. So we need to look at ways to improve that moving forward. So what are our options and what's been done in other states and other whitetail populations? Option one, obviously we want to try to increase doe harvest. We've added seasons, hasn't made a huge dent. It's nice to see that lowering the price of doe tags is on the table, make it more affordable and advantageous for people to do so. I think we could also expand the donation offering for people who want to shoot does that already fill their freezer, but we need to make a bigger dent. And then I think including a doe in the combo tag up front so people have it right away and don't have to spend additional money in addition to their combo tag is a good way to start addressing that. Other options, $1 has been tried in some other states. You look at Ohio, it is one of the best up and coming hunting states because their guys can only shoot $1, and if they want multiple deer to fill the freezer, they're filling those other tags with doe tags. So that would help balance out the harvest of bucks to does. In Michigan, it's not a huge percentage, but there's a lot of people still, and there's a number that if you took away a second buck tag, that automatically comes off the buck harvest. Additionally, that's going to force hunters to be more selective if they have $1 tag. There's a lot of people with the mentality that may let a deer walk, knowing they don't have that second tag, to shoot weight on a bigger deer or something like that. So again, maybe $1, one doe on a combo tag. That's an option. The third option that states have tried, and this has the most data to support it, is antler point restrictions. So Michigan has tried it in several counties. I'm sure you guys know all the data there. Pennsylvania is a great case study of that as well. They implemented it in 2002. We're 20 years deep into their study. What have we found? They have a more balanced buck to doe ratio. They have a better age structure in the buck population. That leads to a healthier herd, a more synchronized rut, better genetics because the mature dominant deer with better genetics are better breeders. So it's a win-win-win for the population and the resource. On top of that, when APRs have been implemented in both Michigan and Pennsylvania, the hunter satisfaction rates went up significantly. Michigan, when they were surveyed, over 75% of hunters, liked that change. I didn't know we could get 75% of hunters to agree on something. So that's really good. And Pennsylvania's hunter satisfaction numbers are also up there with those, and they've been doing it a lot longer. And Pennsylvania is one of the closest situations you can get to Michigan. Super high hunter density, super high deer density, and they've addressed it. And if you go back and look at their 24-25 hunting season harvest numbers, they shot 175,000 antlered deer, 301,000 antlerless deer. Those are numbers Michigan would dream of right now because we're still killing more bucks than we do does, and it's not addressing that ratio. So Pennsylvania actually uses $1 and APRs. So it's something we should definitely look at. This will all help drive a broader shift in culture as well to better deer management, amongst our up and coming hunters. It might help keep some hunters home instead of leaving the state for better opportunity as well. The hunters in this state and the generation who are going to be moving forward, are ready for change, for real change to, tag structure versus doing the same thing we've been doing the last 30 plus years that I've been doing this. Whether we use one of those tools, all of those tools, we need to make a change. Because at the end of the day, I get people don't like change, but it's what's best for the resource and best for our deer population moving forward. So anyway, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Hopefully we can get something done.
Thank you, Justin.
Good morning, everybody. John Krakowski from Mountain Lake. I've made the second trip down here from the UP to ask for support in the archery antlerless restoration. As I traveled across US 2 this morning, at 4:30 in the morning, the speed limit was 65 miles an hour. I did not dare to drive that fast. There was deer all along the road. Contrary to popular belief, the UP is at carrying capacity now. Carrying capacity determines the deer population. And when I look at what archery hunters are going to take, they're going to take some of the surplus deer, leaving more for the wolves
I don't believe the wolves will be a factor. Like I said, I believe we're at carrying capacity. And deer and wolves evolved over 10,000 years together. Archery hunters taking a few of the surplus deer are not going to change 10,000 years of evolution. I don't believe we're in any danger of coming to the point that we're not going to have a population of us. And what was said earlier, by Sarah Thompson, the wildlife chief, Chad Stewart is a revered national deer biologist. I think we should take his advice. He supports this. And that's all I really have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Michelle Hubbard.
Morning, Commissioners, Director. I'm here today to show my support for the return of archery doe harvest for all of the UP, doe with bow as it is called. No matter where whitetails exist, they have the same biological needs that must be met in order to be healthy and balanced over the long term. Needs that ensure that deer are thriving, not just existing. Understanding that balance is not a Uper versus troll issue. Just because myself and many others are from the Lower Peninsula doesn't mean we cannot understand the biological needs of deer in the UP. The only difference is that all of the factors that make survival more difficult for deer exist in the UP. Harsh winters, limited quality habitat, apex predators, and a very buck-centric harvest, both due to regulation issues and hunter personal choices. Which means that maintaining balance in the UP deer herd is even more critical than anywhere else. It has been proven that it doesn't matter how many pregnant does that you protect with doe harvest bans. If there's a significant imbalance in the deer herd, those fawns are destined to not survive. The data does not support doe bans. Biologists do not support it. Presentations have been given several times now over several years that do not support it. Low fawn recruitment equals a deer herd that just survives, or worse, declines. Whether it is from predators picking off fawns from spread out fawning season, or late-born fawns not making it through the winter because they're just too young and small. Whitetails have evolved to breed within a certain time frame, and fawns are born within a certain time frame for a good reason. And when that cannot happen due to imbalanced sex ratios and buck-heavy or buck-only harvests, then a deer herd cannot recruit new, young, vigorous members, and it suffers. As stewards of the resource, we must also all come to terms with the reality that no matter how much more water you add to the bucket, once it is full, adding more will not result in more deer. Some doe harvest is critical to a balanced deer herd in a hunted population. If you are taking bucks, you must also take does. And no one is saying that the same ability to take does like in the Lower Peninsula should be in the Upper Peninsula. Limited archery-only doe harvest is not opening the floodgates, and all of the hunters will kill all of the does. Again, the data does not show that. Decades of hunter harvest prove that when doe with a bow existed, that only a limited number of does were taken. In fact, it has been more of a struggle to get Michigan hunters to take does than the opposite. Hunter mentality is one of the biggest limits to there being a significant or detrimental doe harvest. If hunters are not seeing large number of does or deer in general, they will not build a doe tag on even one doe. It just won't happen. Even in the Lower Peninsula where hunters see 20, 40, or 100 deer a night, hunters are still having to be practically begged to take a few doe. The doe harvest ban was supposed to only be for a couple of years and as a reaction to some exceptionally severe winters. It didn't do what it was intended to do, and it didn't prove the biologists wrong either. It is long past time to restore doe with a bow, and today is the day. Thank you.
Elliot Hubbard.
This afternoon,
morning, Commissioners. I'm here today in support of Commissioner Walters' amendment to restore the antlerless archery. I was not part of the BMI, I was not part of the DAC team, but my wife was, and I had the privilege to hear quite a few of the meetings that they had with a lot of biologists. To the biologists from Wisconsin were on the BMI, talking about how warehousing does can be detrimental. The same biologists that we had here last year during the coyote debate spoke soundly on a lot of the winter depredation deer that they found was already in starvation mode. As we heard earlier, we don't have the wintering complexes in the UP to sustain the carry capacity. Something that I was planning on doing was going to be kind of like the bull in the china shop. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart because for so many years we've managed the resource based on the hunters, their needs and opportunities. We stopped managing deer. We're only managing deer for the opportunities of the hunter and the hunter experience, and we're paying the ultimate price. Carry capacity on the biology side is no different in the UP than it is in Zone 3 or Zone 2. Carry capacity dictates all. Deer on a biological level need the same thing in the UP as they need in the lower. They need food, they need shelter, they need water, and they need low stress. The UP is a lot more stressful than the lower. I'm not going to disprove that, and obviously there's a lot more predation. However, if we don't have the carry capacity of winter habitat, it doesn't matter how many does you protect. They're never going to grow in density because winter complexes can't support it. When you skew the antlerless ratio to antlered ratio, that means their buck survival is going down. The very people that are against the doe with the bow want the bucks, but if your bucks are breeding in the UP into January, it's a death sentence. There's not the food there to carry this deer or for this buck to recover if he's still breeding in January and February. On the same side of that, the does that we do have in biology, the old matriarch does, the dominant matriarch does, will control the best habitat there is with ferocity. That means the younger doe groups are not going to have access to the quality food. The younger bucks, even some of the older bucks, will not have access to that quality food because those old, large doe groups will fight anything and everything to protect. It is survival of the fittest. So how are we expecting to grow the deer density if the carry capacity can't hold it? As long as Chad's been here, Chad has asked for doe with a motor to be restored. As others have said, it's not going to be a death sentence. And yes, we are one winter away from potentially a collapse, as some people say. We have the ability or the opportunity to start minimizing that. Restoring archery with, or doe with a bow is not going to be this mass kill off as some want to claim. It is going to be a help. Because in the same breath that we're going to ban doe with a bow, there's areas in the mid-belt that can take does. Deer don't know property lines. They don't know superior watershed versus the mid-belt versus the banana belt. So it's okay for some of these does to cross the superior watershed in the mid-belt. We can shoot them with rifle, that's perfectly fine, but archers can't touch them. I think it's one of those situations where we have to take our own personal interest and personal needs aside and go back to managing deer. Yes, I want to have a deer herd in a sustainable herd to hunt, but if that means that's 5 deer per square mile or 3 deer per square mile because that's what the habitat can sustain, then that's what we need to go to. It's those hard decisions that you guys have to face that I don't envy, but it's what's right. Speaking with biologist in Ohio, Mr. Kongovich, that was one thing that he stressed quite a bit is we need to make the hard decisions. The ones that actually have a positive impact on the resource, we need to manage our deer for deer and put the hunter's needs second, not first over the deer resource. So I ask that you all restore the doe with the bow and let's start managing the UP resource for what it is and protect it. Because for the last 10 years, we haven't done that. Thank you.
Director, Commissioners. This is a moment 10 years in the making. June 11th, 2015 is when Go with the Bow of the Superior Watershed was revoked. And I've been working every day since then for this moment. Because what was done was wrong. We did something to do something. We didn't do the right thing. We didn't adhere to science, best practices. We appeased public concern. A friend of mine says this. He says, if you have the law, pound the law. If you have the science, pound the science. And if you don't have either one, pound the podium. I saw some of that in testimony earlier today. I saw podium pounding. I didn't see truth. I didn't see the law. I didn't see science. I saw emotion and opinion. Chairman John McConnich in 2015, in an interview following the decision to remove the archery doe tag from the Superior Watershed, said this: deer hunting is an important tradition in Michigan's Upper Peninsula and a big economic driver. This decision by the Natural Resources Commission will ensure that that tradition continues. He's right. It's a huge economic driver. And my mom and pop's gas stations and grocery stores and bars are gone. My deer herd is struggling. Our small towns are struggling. That decision had exactly the opposite effect that it was intended to. It's interesting that John Mazoga continues to be cited by some of my fellow Yoopers in his adamant supposed objection to doe harvest. So I'm going to read you a direct quote from Mr. Ozoga. Buck-only harvesting. Under bucks-only hunting, the deer harvest generally falls far short of the potential and is the surest way to minimize total deer harvest. While there sometimes may be good reason for minimizing harvest temporarily, this management approach should not be viewed as a way of producing a large deer harvest. When only bucks are shot, the overwinter population continues to grow, ultimately beyond the capacity of the natural range to support a healthy deer herd. High newborn fawn mortality and overwinter mortality of malnourished deer contribute to a sharp decline in annual recruitment rates. Furthermore, a buck-only harvest generates a low recruitment of both male and female, thus fewer bucks becoming available for harvest. A high female deer density causes considerable social stress and excessive long-distance dispersal of younger males. Consequently, inadequate harvest of antlerless deer can result in severely distorted adult deer sex ratios and scarcity of antlered bucks. John Zobit. I heard a gentleman sit here earlier and acknowledge, well, yeah, we're above carrying capacity. That right there ends the argument to me. If we're having a scientific, biological discussion and you tell me we're over carrying capacity, there's only one answer. You cannot carry more deer than we can handle in the UP. Why? Because they'll cause irreparable damage to already struggling deer wintering complexes. Pregnant does will consume 2.5 times the calories of a doe that isn't pregnant or a buck. So we're trying to jam struggling winter complexes to overflowing with the hungriest deer in the woods. And we can't figure out why we have a problem. It's mind-numbing to me. Interestingly enough, you know, I continue to hear concern from certain demographics in the UP. And a lot of it comes from the 60 and up crowd. So if you look at the deer camp survey, 48% of our hunters, our licensed buyers in the UP, are 60 years old and older. Most of those guys are guys that don't want to shoot a doe. Refuse. Won't do it. So if you bring back doe with a bow, I'm going to tell you, based on the statistics in front of me, only half the hunters are even going to do it. So how is half a single-digit percentage point going to bring about the apocalypse of UP deer hunting? I don't think it's intellectually honest. I think the biology is clear. I think our biologists have been clear. I believe I have the law, and I have science, so I don't need to pound the table. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Welcome back, Dan. Good to see you. It is afternoon. So I wanted to chat briefly first about coyote season. So after the Commission voted to table the order reopening coyote season last month, we started what we call the Coyote Coalition. In the month since, about 2,000 landowners have signed this petition urging the Commission to reopen the season, and they represent 75,000 private acres of land ownership, which is just under 40 acres per person on average. And I feel that number is important because we need to dispel this notion that the existing nuisance regulations are in any way adequate for coyote management in this state. And really, the Commission just needs to take action, end this today, and reopen the coyote season. I'm going to transition now to kind of a parallel idea in terms of the way it was handled with our Liberty and Independence hunt being antlerless only starting this year. I brought with me today this giant buck. This was my first deer from either the first or second youth hunt 20-something odd years ago. And I was getting ready this morning talking to my wife and I saw it and I grabbed it off the wall and thought it was important to bring because it represents the memory that I was able to make with my father at the time. For my first hunt, my first deer, my first time carrying a rifle in the woods. And for a statistically negligible amount of harvest, we're taking that opportunity away from my daughter, anyone else's kid here in the room, when they go out this fall. Not to mention our hunters with disabilities, our veteran hunters. And while I guess I could logically get to the justification of why this decision was made last year, again, it's still a negligible amount of harvest, a negligible amount of effort, and we just need to give these kids the opportunity, these disabled hunters the opportunity, these veterans the opportunity to harvest the deer that they want when it is having no impact on the resource. Exceptionally brief today. I'd be happy to entertain any questions, or if you just want to check out the big buck, I'll be around for a while afterwards.
Justin, would that buck there meet APRs?
I haven't put a ruler to it in probably 20 years. It'd be close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. Bob Jones.
Good afternoon, Director, Commissioners. There's nothing that I can add to what's been said by the last 4 or 5 people. As I stated last month, Michigan Bow Hunters certainly supports the go with the bow in the Upper Peninsula. The decision that was made 10 years ago has had, as pointed out, the exact opposite impact on the resource than what it was intended to. I can't help but think today I heard about the one winter away. What do we want that one winter to look like? If we go into if we get that winter after we jam a whole bunch more deer in there, we don't end up at the end of the winter with whatever would have survived, and we end up with every deer coming out of that deer yard sick and dying. We can't force more deer into the winter habitat than what the habitat will support, even through the worst winter. Or all of our deer suffer. And that's how carrying capacity works. We don't end up with just, Mother Nature doesn't let 5% of the deer eat and 5% or 10% or 20% come out healthy. They come out with 100% of the deer malnourished in the winter and really struggling, and the fawn mortality rate being excessively high. And the impact that the archers are going to have, I'm sure you guys remember the slide that Chad had showed during his presentation about hunter effort versus success. And in my head, when I first thought about that, I thought that as the deer numbers decline, that it would be just a parallel line going up, pretty consistent from bottom to top. But if you remember the graph that he showed us, the success rate on hunters when deer numbers are high pretty much stayed at a flat line across. The hours of effort barely changed at all until you got to real low deer numbers and then that line with a straight up climb. The success rates for archery, we're in that straight up climb in the Upper Peninsula, and the success rate for bow hunters is still going to be very, very negligible. You're going to have a lot of unsuccessful hunters still. They'll have the opportunity to hunt antlerless deer, but their success rates are going to be excessively low. And now, today is the time to restore the antlerless opportunity and put some equity back into the hunting opportunities for all hunters in the state of Michigan. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. That concludes our 5-minute sign-ups. We're on to 3-minute sign-ups, and first up is Monica Sykes.
Good afternoon, Director, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. I'm here again to request the staff to the roundup and gassing and slaughtering of our wild Canada geese. One of the reasons was given was bird flu, but if bird flu is really a concern for not relocating wild Canada geese, then why are so many domestically raised birds continually released into the environment? I have 3 examples. The DNR releases pheasants during hunting season in 13 areas within Michigan. DNR also allows thousands of commercial farm-raised mallard ducks released yearly, and farm supplies businesses are allowed to sell domestic ducklings and goslings for mere pennies. And then just in a couple months they look full grown, they're abandoned to the nearest lake, pond, field, or even neighborhood. There's no scientific environmental impact studies completed to justify the roundup and mass killing of Canada geese. No baselines, no metrics, no tracking, nothing to gauge the success or failure. And I'd like to commend the presenters for the inline guide program. Their data is, having that kind of data is just so critical and powerful, but we're lacking any of that kind of data for the Canada geese. There's a reason that they travel in flocks, safety in numbers, and multiple babies. They have multiple babies because most don't make it to the first year. These roundups and killings are being done just because some people don't like them, not based on science. The DNR has admitted they're relying on the honesty of people who happen to hate Canada geese to follow the process. But the DNR hasn't actually followed their own process as experienced on Belle Isle. And lastly, I'd like to mention that the amendment number 9 says 2024 resident goose, Canada goose program changes. But migratory geese are also killed. As far as I know, the only way to tell the difference is through genetic testing. So please rescind the NRC change made last October, and don't gas or send our Canada geese to slaughterhouses. And then quickly, I'd just like to mention about the extending the coyote hunting season. So for food, most don't hunt coyotes for food. For the springtime is the worst time to hunt coyotes because they're shedding their pelts. So that's not really much need for that. Self-defense, there's been no documented injuries to humans, including children in Michigan. So I have cited some examples. And so why is sound science discounted if certain coyote hunting advocates don't like what is proven to be scientific? There's some examples. USDA even did a 7-year demonstration study, and they found that predation numbers actually increase after predators are killed. There's no clear evidence that lethal control works to reduce human-predator conflict. And also, I'd like to mention, everybody's talking about the deer need to increase the deer, but the cities in Farmington Hills, Southfield, and Farmington just approved using federal sharpshooters to mass kill the deer, and they're working to expand that to 25 cities in our area. So, thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Thad Dickinson. And next up on deck after Thad is Trish Marines.
Commissioners, for this opportunity to speak with you. Earlier this week, I submitted written comments to the Commission urging it not to approve Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment number 4 of 2025. If you read my email, you know that I provided a bibliography of 21 peer-reviewed research studies and proceedings that speak to why the Commission should not amend its 2024 decision to return the coyote hunting season back to its original 9-month duration. Supporters of the WCO Amendment number 4 often invoke the word science, but to paraphrase a line from Princess Bride, they think using that word, I do not think they mean what I do not think they know what it means. The science I presented to you is peer-reviewed. Peer reviewed is a rigorous process where an editorial board of experts from a specific field or discipline evaluates the quality of research submitted for publication. It's a form of quality control. If the research isn't good enough, the methodology is faulty, if the findings are suspect, it doesn't get published. The peer-reviewed research, the science, categorically shows that the indiscriminate lethal removal of coyotes is not, to quote Proposal G, sound scientific management. And if the Commission ignores that peer-reviewed research, it's making a subjective, emotion-driven decision, not a scientific one. I recognize that some on the Commission and many in this room will continue to ignore the peer-reviewed science because it doesn't fit the narrative they want to hear to serve their personal interests. But to quote astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, the good thing about science is that it's true, whether or not you believe in it. I'd also like to state my opposition to the planned gassing this summer of Canada geese by Wildlife Services. This is Holly. Holly was adopted from a rescue in Colorado to chase geese off the golf course and grounds of Windsor Gardens, a 55 and over community in Denver, Colorado, where my mom worked for 25 years. For over 10 years, Holly's job was to chase geese, and she and the service she provided were loved by those who considered geese an obstacle to their golf game, and by those who didn't mind dodging the droppings during a leisurely stroll. Holly was a win-win for the golf course, grounds, residents, and the geese. And when she retired to live out her life with my mom, residents gave her the type of farewell party given to retiring military and police canine units. Dogs like Holly are a practical, humane alternative to using taxpayer money to cull thousands of geese and goslings that someone has deemed a nuisance. There are hundreds of dogs in Michigan available for adoption right now that can be trained to chase geese. If the condo boards and homeowner associations would rather shop for a dog than rescue one, they can purchase a working dog like Holly from a reputable breeder. In fact, there are 4 border collie breeders in the state. I urge the Commission to place a moratorium on the legal control of geese and instead support humane alternatives like working dogs. Finally, I'd like to remind the Commission that issues like coyote hunting and gassing wild geese aren't restricted to this room, but are connected to larger public concerns about hunting ethics, community input, and the role of science in wildlife management. And I'd just like to add one other thing. I understand that the vast majority of people in this room don't agree with me, and I respect that. I've been to several of these meetings, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear about your lives, your passions, and your point of views. And I have a much greater knowledge about the hunting community thanks to these forums. Thank you.
Thank you. Trish? And on deck is Karen Stanford.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Trish Murray. Henry David Thoreau was walking through the woods one day, as he always did, and he came across a couple of neighbors shooting squirrels. And he says, "You gonna eat those squirrels?" And the neighbor said, "No, we're just shooting them for fun." And Thoreau shook his head and said, "You know, the squirrel you kill in jest dies in earnest." Everyone understands ethical food hunting and the camaraderie that goes along with it, deer camp and things like that, especially here in Michigan. But not too many people agree with killing an animal just for fun. These animals have as much interest in their own lives as we have in ours. And it's never more true when they're trying to raise families. They have as much interest in staying alive and staying healthy to take care of their families as you and I do. And if we want to get into science, well, you know, some people say, the science says, let's kill the coyote. Some people say, the science says, let's not kill the coyote. The science doesn't say either of those. Science predicts an outcome. It doesn't tell you what to do. As for science, there is a podcast called Learn Your Land by Adam Harris. It's on all of the social media sites. I watch it on YouTube. This guy, Adam Harrington, he really knows his stuff. His YouTube and his podcasts are really interesting. And this week, he pointed out that white-tailed deer cannot get Lyme disease. They're immune to it. If a Lyme-infected tick bites white-tailed deer, the white-tailed deer's immune system kills the Lyme-causing organism. It just kills them. What acts as a reserve for Lyme disease is rodents. The Lyme or the ticks spend their youth on rodents. And when do ticks come out? In the spring. And what is hunting rodents obsessively to feed their families in the spring? Coyotes. You want fewer ticks and fewer Lyme disease? Maybe let the coyotes live in the spring and eat those rodents. And lastly, let's not be gassing geese. I mean, that's already making national news. Michigan wants to round up flightless geese and gas them. There's got to be a better way to deal with this problem. Personally, I think people who are annoyed by the geese, develop a little bit more compassion. I have my property is overrun with deer, and it's also overrun with turkeys. I like the deer, but the turkeys annoy me to no end. I hate those turkeys. I don't want anyone to come and gas the turkeys. You know what I do? I throw frisbees at them. Doesn't work for long, but it works for that day. So I'm getting pretty good with my frisbee throwing. Thank you very much.
Karen Stampler? And next up is Iris Potter. Oh, there is. There is.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Karen Stamper, and I'm here today to urge this board to rescind the policy allowing the gassing of Canada geese based on nothing more than the honor system. I recently received a detailed response from Caitlin Barnes, the DNR's acting waterfowl specialist. While I appreciate her time, I was stunned by what I read. The DNR freely admits that they do not verify homeowner petition signatures, do not confirm the number of homes on each lake, and do not require any documentation of deterrence used before granting a permit to gas geese. In fact, Ms. Barnes wrote, there is no feasible way for us to verify. We rely on sites to be honest. Is that science? Is that policy? No. That's bureaucracy enabling cruelty through willful ignorance. You're killing native wildlife based on unchecked complaints from HOA boards that openly admit they simply don't like goose droppings. There's no requirement to prove that non-lethal methods were attempted. There's no penalty if 100 geese threshold turns out to be false. In one case, Lake Sherwood gassed 108 geese, including 66 babies, based on unverifiable claims and misleading petitions. No deterrents were used beforehand, and some residents didn't even know what was happening. And when I asked to observe the roundup process, I was told I can watch, but I would not be given the location sites or where or when the roundup would take place. I was told the locations are not public. So let me get this straight. We can FOIA the information after the geese are dead, but not before. That's not transparency, that's obstruction. We would like to see the Commission rescind your decision on gassing and slaughtering the geese and put into effect a 3 to 5 year non-lethal program which would involve landscape modification, buffers, rain gardens, deterrents like the tow and collect machines, flock-free sprays, dog hazing, etc. Education is key. This board must act. The public trusts you to uphold integrity and science, not convenience. Please rescind this broken and inhumane program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Iris Potter. And next up is going to be Merle Jones, who we missed on the 5 minute. So bring Merle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Hi, my name is Polly from Kalamazoo. I'm here to talk to you about the coyote hunting season proposal to allow the year-long open season, even though the current rules have only been in place 1 year. Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment 4 of 2025 states, quote, fur bearer regulations are on a 2-year regulatory cycle that was agreed upon by the NRC and the Wildlife Division in 2014 in order to provide consistency in regulations, and a quote. The order, signed by relevant division personnel, clearly states, quote, this order is being requested by the NRC outside of the agreed upon 2-year cycle. The Fur Bearers Work Group recommended the coyote season be closed during the time of upland rain. This group, consisting of hunters and trappers, were concerned that allowing pups to be orphaned and left to survive while in their dens could turn the public against hunting. They're right. The Michigan public is watching, seeing the media, etc. This new order will not help the image of Michigan's hunters. Best available science is to be used when making decisions, and studies have been presented or emailed to you, including from Michigan resident Dr. Naomi Dushwarm, showing definitively that killing coyotes only increases the coyote population. This is rebounded, we all know that. I have not seen other science proposed to the Commission that shows otherwise. I also respectfully note that Policy 4104 stated that, quote, the NRC is opposed to the payment of bounties on predatory animals because there is no cause and effect relationship for predators versus prey when using a bounty system, end quote. Allowing the unlimited killing of coyotes year-round is no different from paying a bounty on them, and the science shows that it also does not have any impact on the predator-prey relationship. In closing, I am deeply sad and disappointed in this order. If you approve it, tomorrow our state could be killing coyotes with nursing pups who cannot yet care for themselves to survive with no bag limit. I can picture this horrific scenario. And is it what the majority of people in Michigan want? I truly doubt it. Wildlife is part of the public trust. So I, backed by many of my fellow Michiganders, ask you to honor your own procedures and stand by the 2-year policy. I also oppose gassing the geese. It's very wrong. So I'll say one more quote. When people raise their guns as an expression of hatred towards a species, that's not hunting. It was said by someone in Wyoming. Thank you.
Merle Jones. Merle, I apologize, we skipped over you.
No, that's
5 minutes.
okay. I might have been a little miscommunication on my part too, but we got in here, so thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Council, Director. Last month I mentioned the pseudoscience concept of auditory, autogenic, compensatory reproduction. Did anybody here fact check me on that? No? No? Well, I'd like to think that that kind of displays your faith in me, but we'll find out. You might wonder why I brought this up out of the blue. And the reason is because it's a shining example of how the preservationists are fabricating science to further their agenda. Fortunately for our natural resources, actual hard science will overcome illusory truth every time, unless we choose to look the other way. I'm not in the business of looking the other way. Last November, voters in Colorado defeated Proposition 127, an effort to totally ban mountain lion and bobcat hunting, and they defeated it by about 9.5%. And there's a lot of reason to cheer about that, but as positive as I try to be, I can't help but think how ridiculous it was that it was even on the ballot in the first place. California right now is in the middle of the battle over the next step of incrementalism to ban coyote hunting. 2 days ago in Oregon, they had a hearing on a bill to ban beaver trapping, which, boy, I'm not too sure that wouldn't be quite a mess here in Michigan if we couldn't manage our beaver anymore. These are just a few of the many active threats across this country. All of these threats have common denominators. They're all designed toward the end goal of zero harvest of any animals. And they are all propagated with absolute garbage, like the concept of auditory autogenic compensatory reproduction. Emotional rhetoric, pseudoscience, ballot box biology, anything they can find or connect to hard science. I haven't said this for a while, so I'll repeat it today. I'm not here to lobby for my favorite sport. And honestly, my favorite sport is golf, as much as lousy as I am at it, but I'm here for the same reason the NRC exists, and that's to defend our natural resources from the insidious threat of politics. Be it politics from anti-hunters or from hunters. I've got the receipts for everything I've said today, or any other day I've talked. But as I said at the March meeting, I don't know what you need to know. I can absolutely swamp you with information that validates what I can barely begin to comment on in 3 or 5 minutes here. But I realize you're probably not going to learn it like I have. I'm a little weird. I don't even have a TV at home. I immerse myself in this stuff. So I get it. That's not everybody's deal. It happens to be mine. So I know what I'm talking about. So as I offered and requested at the March meeting, tell me how I can help you. We're all on the same team, right? I'm pretty easy to find. Pretty sure you all got my number. Let me know what I'm saying that you may not agree with or don't understand. You know, I come up here for 5 minutes and more often than not, like everybody in here, there's some feedback. So again, I don't know what you don't know. So please, let me help you. And it's not out of respect for me and my constituents, then at least out of respect for our wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Corona. And after Kimberly is Marissa Jardine.
Good afternoon, Director, Vice Chair, and the Commissioners. My name is Kimberly Corona. As a Michigan resident, humane educator, and supporter of advocates for Michigan wildlife, I'm very concerned about the new policy to gas Canada geese. As humans, we think we know how to control wildlife and ecosystems, but ecological balance is very delicate, and it's our actions that often create the imbalance. According to the National Audubon Society in the 1900s, Canada geese were almost decimated due to habitat destruction and overhunting. Canada geese are a native North American wildfowl, and Michigan is their home. There are many humane strategies for dealing with human-geese conflicts that support peaceful coexistence, such as fencing, habitat modification, bird deterring, scaring them off properties with dogs and loud noises, egg and nest destruction, and relocation. These mitigation strategies have been used in Michigan for many years. They are effective and supported by the public. I think as the public are starting to learn about the gassing, many of them are opposed to it. I know it has been said that gassing is a last resort, but it should not be an option at all. It is not humane whether it is classified as such, and it is my understanding that while the ABA does classify it as humane for some species, geese are an exception. I strongly urge you to rescind the decision to gas geese in Michigan and to use non-lethal methods and actions that are truly humane strategies for geese management. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. And John Zagui. Oh, did I skip over? Oh, I did. Marissa, I'm sorry, we'll come back to you.
I'm John Bowie, I'm from Brighton, and my topic is Proud Lake Recreation Area, the trout stocking there. I've been fishing that area since about 1980, and this year, I wasn't able to get out there until opening day, the last Saturday in April. The fish stock there amount to about 3,000 fish a year, give or take a couple hundred. And they're dispersed in 2 locations, downstream and then upstream by the dam from Moss Lake, down from there. This year, almost all the fish were stocked in the lower stretch of the river by Wixom Road. And I think that distance of the river is about 1.5 miles. When I got out there, I fished my usual stretch, which was downstream from the dam about a third of a mile. And that's a really nice, wadeable stretch, a lot of sand bottom, and it makes it easy for a lot of people to fish that stretch. Downstream from there, it gets muddy and mucky and difficult. But I didn't see any fish. I saw 1 fish in my wade upstream. And that location where I put in actually is the conference event center area. And everybody kind of knows it as the fire ring section. But so I fished upstream and just saw the 1 fish and saw 1 fish at the dam. And speaking with the CO, I guess there was an idea to put most fish downstream and see how they would travel upstream to the dam. Part of the issue with dumping them at the dam, I guess, is that they're highly concentrated and there's poaching that goes on. But I'm requesting that the fish be planted in whatever downstream location and then also at the fire ring section. And then those fish can disperse up and downstream because, again, there's maybe a dozen to 2 dozen fishermen that fish that upper stretch. And now this year, everything was concentrated down at the lower end. People putting boats in. And the upper stretch by the dam is a really nice place for families to introduce kids to fishing, and they can catch a nice trout. I mean, there's a lot of 15, 18-inch trout there. So I appreciate the consideration, and I hope they can plant fish upstream again. Thank you.
Thank you. Marissa?
Hello, Commissioners and Director Cohen. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Commission. My name is Marissa Jardine. I'm the Clinic Manager and Licensed Wildlife Rehabilitator of the Bird Center of Michigan in Saline. Our board voted to oppose implementation of CO Amendment 9 of 2024, Resident Canada Goose Management Program changes. We were founded in 2004, and this is our first NRC meeting. We are a wildlife rehabilitation facility licensed through the DNR and U.S. Fish Wildlife Service. We are licensed to care for migratory and non-migratory birds, and we are the largest bird specialty rehab in the state. Since our founding in 2004, we have taken in nearly 20,000 birds. Our relationship with the DNR and U.S. Fish Wildlife Service is a good one. It is necessary to have agency oversight of rehabbers to ensure the highest standards of care for wildlife patients and that applicable laws and regulations are followed. Each year, we care for hundreds of orphan baby waterfowl, nurturing them for weeks before releasing them back into the wild. This includes Canada geese. Our bird flu protocol, or HPAI protocol, is to quarantine all young waterfowl in a separate building and test them for avian flu. Once negative, they get moved into our waterfowl barn where we raise them to release. We emphatically believe that, with proper precautions and care, waterfowl, including Canada geese, will have a chance to live their lives in the wild. Please give them this chance. We also speak out against the CO2 gassing method. When our patients must be euthanized, we take great care to make it as stress-free and peaceful as possible. We know birds, and we understand that the process of rounding up the adults and young and forcefully transporting them to a van to be stuffed into a chamber will produce stress. The use of gas is contradicted to these birds who can hold their breath for up to 45 minutes, thereby prolonging their deaths. Canada geese are deeply protective parents, and separating them from their flock causes intense distress. We see this firsthand in rehab. When possible, we wild foster our orphan goslings because geese have such strong parental instincts, they'll often adopt young who aren't even their own. Geese are easily stressed and tend to scatter when approached, and under current policy, the practice of capturing and gassing them, often in the middle of the day, is not only traumatic, but also chaotic and inhumane. We offer comments today because the insights we've gained over the years may be useful, and because we believe strongly that the Canada Goose program changes are wrong. We ask the NRC to halt the program in 2025 for review, and then to return to prioritizing non-lethal methods of population control, including relocation. Thank you for considering our opinion.
And on deck is Russ Mason.
Thank you for listening. The acting DNR waterfowl specialist told me that one of the main reasons that you're moving forward with the gassing of Canadian geese is that it was an approved method by the American Veterinary Medical Association. And so I read that document more, and it's quite a long document, but the document has a lot of exceptions to the rule. And one of the most clear exceptions to the rule for euthanasia is geese. So it's surprising that the DNR is moving forward with this process, even though one of the clear exceptions is Canadian geese when it comes to euthanasia. The DNR also said that bird flu is one of the main reasons that you're no longer moving the geese. But as mentioned earlier, it was pointed out that we are still placing pheasants and wild birds, or birds throughout Michigan. So either the placement of pheasants should stop, or you can see some of the holes in the argument of no longer wanting to move Canadian geese if that was a solution. The great majority of people are fine with a small number or reasonable number of geese, and the problem becomes when after like 10, 15 pairs of geese, they have their young and they turn into over 100 geese, and that's when the complaints begin. That's why removing some or all of the eggs could have a real impact with the locations that are complaining about the geese. This is a very powerful way to lower the number of geese in the problem areas. Make the communities that are complaining about it hire someone that will, remove the eggs according to the permit if they are unable to do it. And please have follow-up from the DNR. Even a number of hunters are against gassing the geese. So it seems like a logical solution is to tweak the hunting rules and to make removal of eggs the focus for the communities that are experiencing problems. These geese will have to experience much more pain that is necessary because of this misguided policy, and is creating a lot of anger and frustration towards the DNR and the animal welfare community. We are Michiganders too, and hopefully we have a say. So please consider a different solution to this problem. Thank you.
Russ Mason. Next up is Paul Silverman. On deck after Russ.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Director, Counselor. My name is Russ Mason. Today I represent the Nimrod Society. I have roughly 40 years of experience in wildlife conservation, having served as Michigan's Wildlife Chief, Nevada's Wildlife Chief, First Science Advisor of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, and Administrator of Mammal and Invasive Research Programs for USDA Wildlife Services National Wildlife Research Center. Michigan House Bill 4445 proposes to end the ban on the baiting of deer during hunting season. Obviously, what the state legislature chooses to do is entirely independent of the authorities of this commission and the department. Nevertheless, we believe that the NRC and the DNR have a responsibility and perhaps even a legal obligation to speak out against this bill. First, from a science-based wildlife health perspective, baiting of deer is a spectacularly bad idea because it demonstrably increases the likelihood of disease transmission. Cooperative studies funded by the Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Division have demonstrated that deer over bait are far more likely to engage with one another than would otherwise be the case in food plots, agricultural fields, or over natural grounds. Even with the occurrence of significant illegal baiting, the ban in the Northeast Lower Peninsula has been and continues to be the single most important reason that the incidence of bovine tuberculosis dropped from about 6% in 1994 to roughly 2%, where it has remained since. Although data specifically relevant to CWD transmission and baiting have not been published, it is well established that CWD behaves like an infectious disease when first introduced into an area. Therefore, it stands to reason that removing opportunities for close physical interactions among deer must be helpful. Second, and arguably more important, this legislative intervention is plainly wrong because it simply ignores the available science to cater to the recreational whims of a few special interest groups. In this sense, House Bill 4445 is no different than Colorado Proposition 127 to ban cat hunting to satisfy the whims of urban nut hunters and predator advocates, or Colorado Proposition 114 that forced the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Department to reintroduce wolves. The same can be said for legislative interventions or petition campaigns to ban foothold traps in Arizona, Colorado, and Massachusetts, as examples. In the case of deer baiting by legislative caveat, there is no philosophical, ethical, or moral gray area. Policy and management are either science-based or they're not. In closing, consider the experiences of other states. Wyoming and Wisconsin are good examples of what can happen when legislatures overrule science to satisfy some constituency. In Wyoming, CWD has become essentially uncontrollable. Local populations are trending to extirpation, and elk feeding grounds in the northwest part of the state have become infected, likely supercharging the spread and prevalence of CWD not only in Wyoming, but also in Idaho and Montana. In Wisconsin, the 2024 Harvest Survey showed that in the several CWD-positive southwest counties, buck infection rates now approach or exceed 30%. Harvest in those counties has cratered, either because hunters are going elsewhere or because bucks don't live long enough to become big enough to shoot. Data collected by Wisconsin DNR support both those explanations. And to provide the illustration, in Richland County, where 33% of deer tested positive for CWD in 2024, the buck kill ranked 35th out of the last 45 years, while in adjacent Crawford County, where 11% of the deer were CWD positive last year, the buck kill ranked first across the state. Science-based conservation should always be more important than the short-term economic or recreational benefits to a constituency. Thank you.
Paul? And next up is Nate Roseville.
Mike on?
Your turn.
Okay, makes it hard on me just coming up here after him because I wasn't going to go into debating it all today. But even he said there's not the evidence on CWD. I'll leave it at that. I'll go forward. My group supports, I'm going to bore you with all the details, supports the year-round coyote hunt. We want it back. Our group also supports doe with a bow in the UP. People up there deserve the same benefits that we deserve down here. Also, we deserve to bait down here like they bait in the UP. So I want you to take that into consideration when you're looking at this stuff. And now, the other thing I want to go to is, I was here several months ago talking about the digest. I've been assured it's going to be out on time. I'm dependent on your commissioners to not get a phone call from me in September saying, where is the digest? I expect you to show some leadership and make sure it's out on time. Not have me come back here again for the third year in a row saying there's problems. So then I'd like to know if we can set up a response to your emails at an automatic response because my people are telling me they email, and they don't get answers back. But at least if they got an automatic, like legislatures and stuff, come back and say, we received your email. They know that. Right now, they don't know if you got it or not got it. The rest of Michigan.gov has automatic email responses. And so I don't know why you guys can't have it. I just know that our people feel you're not getting it. And I talked to some commissioners and they said they get a condensed version of a bunch of them given to them at one time, but they don't get to read individual emails. So I'm just asking if there's anything you can do to make the public feel a little more comfortable that they're hearing, that their emails are getting through. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We do have automatic email reply. You might want to check your spam filter. I might be getting.
There's an automatic.
I have never got one. I got them from you personally.
There's an automatic. Check your junk box.
Paul, and we do get the letters that are sent. I read every one.
We do. Me too. Nate?
Good afternoon, guys. Fortunately, this is the first time I've ever been to a meeting because of a couple things. It's just tough to get here when you're working at construction, so I know there's been a lot of discussions with people who are similar to me, age group. I'm in the mid-30s. Been deer hunter since I was 12 years old. My whole family has essentially siblings, sisters, distant relatives, those kind of things. But I do know that there's a lot of guys that are passionate about the resources here in Michigan, and they would also like their voices to be heard, kind of piggybacking off the gentleman before me. Maybe I don't know what the power is or anything like that, but it's difficult for some guys to get here on Thursday mornings and do this kind of thing. I know there's a lot of people that want their voices heard and would like to be educated. That's what I want to talk about. I think there's a lot of issues that people are aware of with the DNR and some other things, statistics that are out there, and just lacking some education. I mean, I consider myself a serious deer hunter, and there's a lot of things I've been learning quite a bit more recently that I just have had to kind of put forth an effort to figure those things out. And it's kind of difficult to know who to support or what to do to help when there's a lack of education. So unsure what that may be, what direction that may be in, but I do know there's a lot of good statistics out there and some good data points. And I do agree, being a guy that's been fortunate enough to hunt a lot of private land in Michigan for a long time, that I do see a large amount of does per bucks, and I think it's an issue. I think it's something a lot of people are passionate about. And if you look at all the other states in the Midwest, they seem to have a little better grasp on their buck-to-doe ratio through some of the laws that they may have. And unfortunately, Michigan's got a lot of hunters and maybe a lot of people that are stuck in their ways, and it may take some drastic changes to try to maybe swing the pendulum a little bit. I know there's been some, you guys have done some things also with changing some seasons, extending seasons, doing those things. I participated in those, and I myself have found it, kind of difficult maybe to put a dent in the small amount of areas that I have been on. So a lot of gun hunters in the state of Michigan, a lot of deer get killed in the first couple of days. Is APR one of those things that can maybe take some pressure off the bucks, and maybe they got to shoot a doe because they got to take that extra time. And there's statistics on APRs. I've hunted in the APR zone with great success in the past few years. So just those things from you guys been here. Take this opportunity, and thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Next up is Josh Arbogast, and followed by Lance DeVoy. Close the meeting.
You were very close with my name last time. We struggled a little bit, so appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. My name is Josh Arbogast, from the Lower Peninsula, St. Clair Shores, bottom of the state. First, I kind of want to say that I've listened to all the stats and the facts, and I fully support everything that they're trying to do with the bow. I'm an avid hunter. I understand these type of things. Statistics don't lie. Science doesn't lie. So I fully support the archery tag reinstatement in the UP. Those type of decisions are what a lot of us are yearning for, whether we're in the upper or lower peninsula. A lot of us younger, next generation hunters, these are the types of things that we're looking for. We're looking for the regulations that are based on sound science. Regulations that put the resource first and not the hunter first. I'm a hunter. Put the resource first. I don't care if I come last. I think through the advent of things like social media and podcasts and different avenues of information, the next generation of hunters coming up, they have a more management mindset. I think we understand these type of things a little bit better, and we have all the access to pull all that information, and we see all the opportunity. And you know, I have a little man at home, he's 12 years old, and we're losing hunters in droves to opportunity presented by better quality across state lines. We really are. And I know guys who refuse to buy tags here anymore and refuse to spend their money here, and these are lifelong hunters. These are lifelong guys, good friends of mine, and I don't want my little man coming up to see these things and refuse to hunt Michigan. I really don't. One of the ways we do that, it's been brought up over and over, but we need to control the doe population. We need to get our buck-to-doe ratio balanced. But we need you, the NRC commissioners, to be the checks and balances system that it was set out to be. Maybe we make that all extended firearm season muzzleloader again, and maybe we make it doe only if you want to use all legal firearms. That's fine, you can take a rifle, but it has to be with a doe. Maybe we change the current combo tag structure, but either way, some of these tough decisions are greenlit by you guys to balance the herd. We, the hunters, the sportsmen, we need the NRC to do this through regulation. Hunters are not doing it themselves. We can't continue to kick the can down the road, hunters or regulation. And as hunters, I think as a whole, we've mismanaged the resource for a long time. We've taken from it. And it's time for us to put the resource first and the hunters second. Get back to the resource. And plainly put, we're not going to do that without your guys' regulation. We need your help. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got pretty close to my name too. My family anglicizes that Flemish name as Thibault. I won't make you pronounce it like they do in Belgium or Holland. I'm here today to touch on a few points, to add my voice to others. Nothing new here. We support Rio. By the way, I'm Vice President of Michigan Bow Hunters, belong to most other Michigan bow hunting groups. I'm a lifelong Michigan resident and hunter, all-season hunter. We much support the year-round hunting of coyotes. Just the bottom line, you've heard all the arguments, I won't go back over them. I love the I got a new saying, go with a bow. I love that, so I use that all the time. So we support go with a bow in the UP. But also, one of our friends here in the animal rights group said that they want some help and suggestions for how to control the geese without gassing them per se. And I'd like to offer one. That is to allow, in the constraints that we have with the federal government, I'd like to see hunters being allowed to control these animals more. That's how the American model goes to work. And as a bow hunter, I'd like to suggest that we allow bow hunters to take some of these animals. It's safe, it's quiet, it's more discreet, and if we're allowed to shoot, take the animals on the ground, we could be part of the solution. We love to eat goose, so questions? No? Thank you, by the way, Commissioner Becky Humphreys, for taking over. That's appreciated.
Thank you. That concludes our public appearances. I'd like to thank everybody who made time and effort to get here today and share your thoughts and views with all of us. I'm going to turn my page prematurely on this thing. You want to take a quick break? Commissioners, do you need a quick break before we move on? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll come back. 1:10 in the afternoon. There are no new items for the director this month. We do have 7 land transactions this month. Director, is it your intent to sign these land transactions?
It is.
Righty. Are there any questions from the commission on any of the land transactions? Okay. Please note there are no new orders for information for the director and the NRC this month. We're going to move to old business. There are no new items under old business for the director only, and 4 items that are eligible for action by the NRC and the director this month. The first of those items, Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment number 4 of 2025, coyote hunting season.
Madam Commissioner, hang on. Madam Chair, I wish to remove the table for Wildlife Conservation Order and move that into a postpone indefinitely on this matter.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
So, Commissioner.
Yeah, can you just address the motion separately? Can you remove from the table second vote and then?
Oh, would you like that in 2 separate?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move that we remove the tabling of this Wildlife Conservation Order.
That's removing Conservation Order Amendment number 4, 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes to remove it from table.
Madam Chair, I move that we postpone indefinitely Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment number 4 of 2025, coyote hunting season.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anthony seconds. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Item number 2, Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment number 6 of 2025, small game regulations. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Commissioner Anthony and Walters, seconds. Is there discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment number 7 of 2025, fall turkey hunting regulations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Walters? Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Thank you. Commissioner Rickman? Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment number 8 of 2025, deer regulations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Walter? Is there a second?
We can't move forward without a second.
Do we have a second? Motion dies.
We can't even bring up the subject if we don't have a second.
The second amendment?
No, we're
No,
not talking
this
about
is-
amendments.
This is the motion.
I know, the motion.
We have to open up the wildlife conservation order and then have amendments.
Okay. All right. In that case, I second.
Okay, so motion is open, we have a second. Is there discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I move to amend Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment Number 8 of 2025 to allow antlerless deer taken during the archery season in Zone 1 on any deer license or any deer combination license.
Is there a second to this amendment?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Discussion.
Madam Chair, based on what we have heard today from the majority, as well as the science behind recognizing that there is a small deer herd in the Upper Peninsula, but a out of balance deer herd in the Upper Peninsula, and our goal and to strive for a more healthy deer herd is the rationale behind what I have crafted.
Yes, any discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to comment that going forward, that we include biologists that live and have operated in the Upper Peninsula for decades, people who are alumni of the DNR, who have spoken out very, very boldly on this issue.
And to the counter to that, in speaking with Chad Stewart and his years of trying to push this forward without success, and he is the current deer biologist and expert in the field and recognized nationally for his outstanding work. I would support his support.
Are there any other discussion items? Okay, let's take a roll call vote on this one.
Yes.
Commissioner Walters? Anthony?
No.
Jim?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
The amendment passes.
Chair Humphries, you have to vote because we need 4 votes.
My apologies, yes. Do we want to vote on the full amendment of this order as amended, or do we have a second amendment?
I had a second amendment related to youth season during the Liberty Hunt that I am not moving forward with, but I would like to make a motion after we pass this wildlife conservation order to kind of address some of that, please.
All right. To vote then on the amended wildlife conservation order, amendment number 8 as amended. That's what we're voting on at this point. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No.
Those opposed? No. The amendment passes.
Madam Chair, in lieu of me not bringing forward the youth season and antlerless harvest during that period of time, I move, bear with me here. I move that during hunter safety, that program initiate a portion of time devoted to the importance of harvesting antlerless deer.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion amongst the commissioners? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, that concludes the action items. No business, commissioner reports. Commissioner Matthews.
Yeah, it's becoming dog season quick, and I had a very interesting conversation with a gentleman that was fishing up in the northern end of the UP who is a novice, and he wanted to report to me that, like I predicted, the water would be cold and high and it wouldn't be much the way it worked out. But he said he'd run across a steelhead fisherman, and that the guy had a very peculiar rig, and what did I make of this rig? And I said, well, describe it to me. He said, well, it had a very big Met spinner with a treble hook on it, and a big weight on the other end, and a bobber on the opposite end. So I just thought I'd share that.
Commissioner Green.
Yeah, nothing to report.
Commissioner Laporte.
Nothing personal.
Commissioner Walters.
Thank you. So a couple weeks ago was Michigan Trout Opener, which I thoroughly look forward to each year, of which I spend much of my time with historic stops along the way, first of which I spent time at the Lovell's Township Historical Society, who conducts a leaky wader 1K, where everybody gets in waders and runs or walks 1K. It's a fundraiser for them, and they've held it the last 15 years, of which I have come in last every single year.
Is that part of the Lovell's Boardwalk?
No, that is a different event. So this is conducted on Trout Opener, opening day last Saturday in April. I also attended the Headwaters Chapter Trout Unlimited banquet last Saturday. There were about 100 folks that showed up. It was a great success, and they raised good money, of which my best friend was inducted to the Hall of Fame, which I think very highly of, and am honored that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I was also asked to be the keynote speaker, of which I recognized the folks that have spent a lot of time and energy and contribution to the Headwaters Chapter of Trout Unlimited, which is in Northeast Michigan, Northeast Lower Peninsula, who were of the age of 80 years of old and older, and I recognized 5 of those members. And then in the morning of last Saturday, I spent time at Canada Creek Ranch, of which they had a board meeting and discussed deer harvest, deer regulations, deer management, asked me some questions in relation to what we were going to discuss today. And it was very entertaining and enlightening, and I always enjoy spending time with those folks. Other than that, the usual many phone calls, emails, texts, and great communication that I thoroughly enjoy during a monthly session, so that I get better educated, others get better educated, and it isn't much of a surprise when folks come to these meetings. So thank you for your passion and your desire. And finally, my young pup, German short hair, will turn 9 years old on Sunday. So I'm getting older, and so is he. His name's Winston. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Director.
Thank you. I got just a few pictures to show folks about the ice storm that we had up north. You know, there's a popular advertisement. It was used in Colorado and some other states about Hug a Hunter, and I thought it was a really good ad because hunters do so much for it. But this in particular is Hug a Forester, because these folks, we've had 200 plus DNR staff out involved in the storm response throughout the region. We managed over 4 million acres of forest land, and about 1 million of that was affected by this ice storm. And you can see some of the pictures here, but over 1,900 miles has not even been assessed of roads that lead to these forests that we use to put out the forest fires. The ones who generally put out forest fires, and we're in forest fire season right now, are busy clearing roads, and it is an enormous disaster for our crew there. Like 882 miles are impassable, 150 miles are partially open, 347 miles are open or not impacted. 164 miles have been cleared by the DNR, 442 are open and were cleared by the county or the National Guard. So we have 28,000 additional acres that were assessed last week. We keep making progress on that. Of our state parks, 19 state parks were affected. 5 parks are now open to the public. 6 parks are partially open to the public, and 8 are still closed. State forest campgrounds, there's 21 state forest campgrounds that we've got open, 34 more are still closed. We hope to have everything open by Memorial Day weekend, which is the high season. Just mindfulness about the expense, the devastation particularly to the red pine, and the salvage efforts that are going on there. If the red pine stays down, you can see some of it's just been snapped off, and the top is laying on the forest floor, drying out, and it's going to be a fire hazard. And we have to be mindful of what we do with fires because of all the tinder. It is going to be tinder, and it's located, mostly up in the upper, lower peninsula, some in the upper peninsula. So hug a forester if you can. Thank you.
Tremendous, tremendous devastation up in that area. Thank you. For myself, I've been in DC last week, having conversations on national policy issues, especially with new administration officials. We're a little ahead of what we normally are for appointments. We had an opportunity to talk to some of the new appointees and new secretaries that are in place, and working both Secretary of Agriculture, which is over the U.S. Forest Service, and Secretary of Interior. I have not met with yet, but over, our parks and fish and wildlife and Bureau of Land Management. So, with the federal parks, there are going to be impacts that we'll definitely feel with some of the staffing reductions. But then again, we're also working with them to try and make sure that those reductions are not in areas that are going to hinder wildlife management out in the states. This week has been Tuesday, and I kind of cussed the rain, in all honesty, as I was going back and forth between Vincefield building and the Hobb, the House office building, meeting with members of the Natural Resource Committee of the House and Senate, because I made that trek about 4 times back and forth. But for the sake of all that down timber, I'm glad it was raining, and I hope it stays very wet, because May is our worst fire month generally in the state. So with that, close my page here. Our next regularly scheduled meeting of this NRC is June 12th. It's going to be at the Doubletree by Hilton in Bay City on the riverfront. 1 Winona Park Place, Bay City. And there'll be coffee with the commissioners prior to the meeting at 8:30 that morning. So I look forward to seeing everyone there. And I'd like to thank the commissioners for their tolerance as I tried to get us through this meeting. So thank you. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, before we do, I think we would be remiss if we don't at least acknowledge Dan Kildee for his time on the commission. He is resigned from the commission due to the time and commitment that it takes, and his short duration of time as chair was greatly appreciated. So I just want to make that knowledge known. So with that said, I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
We are adjourned.